You've always been told your mind and body are separate things. Your thoughts stay locked in your head while your body just follows the rules of biology and physics. But what if that clear line between thinking and feeling, between mental and physical, is actually much thinner than anyone ever taught you? Scientists keep discovering that your expectations can change your heart rate, your attention can dial pain up or down, and even your imagination can trigger real changes in your nervous system. What once seemed impossible is now being measured in labs around the world. We'll explore how this hidden connection works in this video and learn more about the surprising power your mind holds over your body. If you like these videos, I would appreciate if you clicked like or subscribed, as it's important for the channel and it helps others find it too, just like you did. Thank you. Now, let's get started. The human mind holds the power to rewrite the signals flowing through our nervous system. When someone believes they're taking a powerful painkiller, their brain releases its own morphine-like chemicals. These endorphins flood the same receptors that respond to actual medication. Brain scans reveal identical patterns lighting up, whether the relief comes from a real drug or pure expectation. Scientists can actually block this natural response using naloxone, a medication that stops opioid receptors from working. When they do this, the placebo effect vanishes completely. This proves that belief triggered genuine neurochemical changes, not just imagination. The thinking parts of our brain send signals down to ancient control centers in the brainstem. These centers then dampen pain messages before they reach our conscious awareness. What makes this even more remarkable is how specific cues can amplify the effect. White coats make fake treatments work better. Expensive pills outperform cheap ones, even when they contain identical ingredients. Large capsules seem more powerful than small tablets. The color matters too, with red pills appearing stimulating and blue ones calming. This happens because our nervous system constantly scans for signs of safety or danger. When the environment suggests that help is coming, our body shifts into repair mode automatically. Heart rate changes, hormones fluctuate, and breathing adjusts, all before any real medicine enters the bloodstream. Researchers call this the meaning response, because context becomes part of the treatment itself. Perhaps most fascinating is how our expectations reshape what we actually perceive. Scientists call this predictive processing, where the brain actively edits reality based on what it thinks should happen. Pour the same wine into bottles with different price tags, and people genuinely taste richer flavors in the expensive version. Their taste buds aren't lying. Their brain is reinterpreting the same chemical signals. You can suddenly notice a sound that was always there, simply because someone pointed it out. An anxious person feels their normal heartbeat as a pounding alarm. This happens because perception combines incoming data with memories, beliefs, and expectations. When the expectation is strong enough, it can completely override the actual sensory information. The implications stretch far beyond medicine. Our brains build reality by making predictions about what should happen next. These predictions prime our senses before information even arrives. This is why you might hear your name in random noise, or why that car you're thinking of buying suddenly appears everywhere. What's truly remarkable is that these predictive patterns can change throughout our lifetime. As we train our expectations, our perceptions shift accordingly. Change what you anticipate, and you literally change what you notice. The world can feel newly detailed, more vivid, filled with information that was somehow invisible before. This reveals something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. The boundary between mind and body turns out to be far thinner than we ever imagined. Thoughts don't just observe reality, they actively participate in creating our experience of it. Every belief, every expectation, every moment of attention sends cascades of signals through our nervous system. These discoveries don't replace our understanding of biology, they expand it dramatically. They suggest that healing involves more than just chemistry and mechanics. The context matters, the relationship matters, the story we tell ourselves about what's happening matters in measurable, biological ways. Modern neuroscience keeps bumping into this same, unsettling truth. What we once dismissed as merely psychological turns out to have deep physical roots. Brain scans, hormone levels, and nerve signals all shift in response to pure belief. The placebo effect isn't a nuisance that interferes with real medicine. It's a window into how consciousness and biology interweave. This raises questions that push the limits of what science can fully explain. How does an abstract thought become a concrete biological change? Where exactly does the mind end and the body begin? These aren't just academic puzzles, they're fundamental mysteries about what it means to be human. The research continues to reveal new layers of this mind-body connection. Immune markers fluctuate with mood. Stress hormones respond to social support. Even wound healing accelerates when people feel cared for and optimistic about recovery. The implications ripple through every aspect of medicine and psychology. Your mind carries blueprints for healing that work in ways most people never realize. When doctors warn patients about potential side effects, something fascinating happens in the brain. Those warnings can actually create the very symptoms they're describing, even when the treatment itself is completely harmless. The brain has networks dedicated to scanning for threats, and these systems light up the moment you expect something might go wrong. If someone tells you a pill might cause headaches, your brain starts watching for any hint of head discomfort. That watching becomes so intense that normal everyday sensations get amplified into something that feels genuinely painful. Think about how strange this is. Your expectation of pain can literally manufacture pain. The brain interprets a harmless tingle as a stabbing sensation because it's been primed to find danger.
Stress hormones flood your system, muscles tighten up, blood flow changes, and suddenly you're experiencing real physical discomfort from something that should be neutral. Medical professionals have started choosing their words much more carefully because they've realized that language itself acts like medicine.
The same information delivered with fear and doom creates more symptoms than the same facts shared with reassurance and support. Some clinics now pair discussions about side effects with detailed coping strategies, so your brain expects help instead of helplessness. This reveals something profound about consciousness and biology working together. The placebo effect is a dark twin, and it shows us that the mind's power over the body isn't always beneficial. Sometimes that power works against us, creating suffering where none needs to exist. Pain itself operates through this same mysterious system. Your brain doesn't just receive pain signals, it actively decides how much pain you'll actually feel. Two people can have identical injuries but experience completely different levels of suffering. Deep in your brainstem, networks exist that can turn pain messages up or down like adjusting volume on a stereo. These pain control systems respond to context in remarkable ways. How safe you feel, how much attention you're paying, whether you have social support, all of these factors influence your pain volume. Soldiers in combat sometimes report feeling almost nothing from serious wounds, only to experience intense pain once they reach safety. The brain prioritizes survival, postponing suffering when you need to keep moving. Once danger passes, the volume gets turned back up, encouraging rest and protection, while tissues repair themselves. This isn't the brain being cruel, it's an elegant system that matches your pain experience to your survival needs. Therapies that use distraction, reassurance, and gradual movement work because they're essentially teaching you how to adjust your own pain dial. Understanding this doesn't make pain imaginary or less real. It reveals that your brain acts as an amplifier for every sensation you experience. When you learn what influences that amplifier, you gain a different kind of control over your own experience. Even during genuine injury and long after healing begins, your thoughts alone can trigger inflammatory responses throughout your body. Even when there's no actual infection to fight, stressful mental stories move your immune system into high alert mode. Researchers can measure inflammation markers rising after exams, arguments, sleepless nights, any situation where your mind perceives ongoing threat. Inflammation serves a useful purpose when fighting actual germs, but when it's triggered by mental stress, it can make joints ache and darken your mood for no physical reason. Your brain communicates with your immune system through hormones like cortisol and through direct nerve signals. When threat feels constant, these messages become chaotic. leaving your body in a state of misguided hypervigilance. This explains why chronic stress slows wound healing and can weaken vaccine responses in research studies. It's as if your body's defenses get allocated to the wrong battles, fighting phantom enemies while real healing needs get neglected. The encouraging discovery is that safety signals, rest and social connection can reverse this inflammatory chaos. Even brief relaxation practices, when done consistently, over weeks, have been linked to measurably lower inflammatory activity. This represents mind over matter at the chemical level, where a calmer mental state helps your body return to appropriate defensive positions. Your breath offers the most direct pathway into these automatic systems. Breathing is unique because it's one of the few body functions you can consciously control that also runs automatically. When you deliberately lengthen your exhales, sensors in your lungs detect this pattern and send calming signals to your brain. These signals travel through the vagus nerve, a wandering cable that connects your brain to your heart and digestive system. As this calming branch of your nervous system activates, your heart rate can slow and become more variable in a healthy way. That heart rate variability acts like a suspension system, helping you absorb life's bumps with more resilience. Singers develop this system through sustained notes, divers through breath holding, meditators through focused attention. They're all training the same fundamental pathway, just using different techniques. Laboratory studies show that paced breathing can reduce blood pressure in many people over time, and it can interrupt panic spirals by giving the brain a steady rhythm to follow. The most surprising aspect is the speed of response. Your nervous system can shift within a single breath cycle for most people. Each slow exhale becomes a direct message to your brain that says everything is safe enough, and your body responds almost immediately to that reassurance. When we sit quietly and focus our minds, something remarkable happens beneath the surface. The brain doesn't see meditation as rest. It treats it like going to the gym. Scientists can actually watch this transformation happen through brain scans, seeing how certain regions grow thicker over time. Areas responsible for paying attention get stronger, almost like building muscle through repetition. The parts that help us control ourselves also develop more substance, more neural real estate to work with. This isn't just wishful thinking or ancient folklore, it's measurable change happening in living tissue. The brain has this incredible ability called neuroplasticity, which means it can reshape itself based on what we do repeatedly. Think about that for a moment. Our thoughts and practices literally sculpt the organ that creates our thoughts. It's like being both the artist and the clay at the same time. Even people who only practice for 8 weeks show differences in brain structure. The emotional networks start working differently too, helping people bounce back from stressful situations more quickly. When something upsetting happens, their brains seem to have better tools for processing it and moving on. It's as if they've built internal shock absorbers that weren't there before. The gap between feeling an impulse and acting on it grows wider. That space, that pause, can change everything about how we relate to other people. Sleep improves when the mind isn't constantly churning through the same loops. Decision-making becomes less reactive, more thoughtful. Scientists are now trying to figure out which types of meditation work best for different kinds of minds, different ages, different problems we're trying to solve. What started thousands of years ago as a spiritual practice is now becoming a precision tool for rewiring consciousness. Researchers can track these changes in real time, watching neural networks reorganize themselves through focused attention and loving-kindness practices. The ancient wisdom keepers might not have had brain scanners, but they understood something profound about the mind's ability to transform itself. Speaking of transformation, hypnosis reveals another fascinating truth about how our brains construct reality. When someone experiences pain relief under hypnosis, the painful sensation on their skin stays exactly the same. The nerve endings are still firing, the damage is still there, but something changes in how that information gets processed upstairs. People describe the pain as distant, muted, or somehow irrelevant to their experience. Brain imaging shows activity shifting in regions that handle attention and meaning, not just the basic sensation itself. It's like the brain decides to file the pain under a different category, turning down its importance. while turning up other experiences. This isn't about believing really hard that pain doesn't exist. It's about the mind literally changing what it chooses to amplify or ignore. Dentists and surgeons sometimes use hypnosis as support, especially when anxiety makes pain feel worse than it needs to. The fear of pain can actually make pain more intense, creating a loop where worry feeds discomfort and discomfort feeds worry. Breaking that cycle through focused attention can provide relief that's both real and measurable. Not everyone can enter hypnotic states easily, and it's definitely not about one person's controlling another person's mind. It works more like cooperation, where someone follows suggestions in a kind of guided mental simulation. Some researchers think of it as turning down competing thoughts, so one particular idea can take center stage. In that focus state, the brain might activate its own built-in calming systems, similar to what happens when we get completely absorbed in a movie or a good book. The deeper lesson here touches on something almost magical about attention itself. How we focus our minds becomes a form of medicine, shaping our experience of pain through the mental stories we inhabit, moment by moment. This connects to a broader truth about how our bodies respond to the theater of the mind. Your heart can start racing during a scary movie, even though you're safely sitting in a comfortable chair. Your palms might get sweaty thinking about an upcoming presentation before you've even left your house. The brain's ancient alarm system can't always distinguish between a memory, a prediction, and what's actually happening right now. So it triggers the same flood of stress hormones, the same shift of blood to major muscle groups, the same heightened alertness that would help you escape from a real predator. This response system saved our ancestors from countless dangers, but in modern life, it can trap us in cycles of chronic tension. People with anxiety often feel exhausted because their bodies are constantly preparing for disasters that never arrive. It's like having a car alarm that goes off every time a leaf touches the windshield. Therapists have learned to use imagination in reverse, teaching the brain that feared situations can actually be survived. Through careful exposure and mental rehearsal, they help the alarm system recalibrate. When the brain learns that something isn't actually dangerous, the whole body can finally relax again. This reveals something profound about the mind-body loop. Thoughts shape our physiology, and our physiology influences the next thought we have. A stressful thought can tighten muscles before we even notice we're thinking it. The body often reacts faster than conscious awareness, preparing for action within fractions of a second. Many people walk around with low-level muscle tension all day without realizing it. The jaw clenches slightly, shoulders creep upward, stomach muscles brace for impact that never comes. Over time, the nervous system starts treating this tension as normal, as the default way of being in the world. What makes this fascinating is how the feedback works both ways. Tight muscles send their own danger signals back to the brain, which keeps thoughts feeling urgent and threatening. But when the body softens, when we consciously release that held tension, the mind often follows. The alarm bells quiet down, thoughts slow down, and we remember what it feels like to simply exist without bracing against the world. When anxiety grips us, something curious happens in the hidden machinery of our bodies. The mind sends signals that tighten muscles, and those tense muscles fire messages back to the brain, creating a conversation nobody asked for. This back and forth exchange builds on itself, like two people arguing louder and louder until neither remembers what started the fight. But here's where human awareness becomes something almost magical. The moment we notice tension creeping into our shoulders or jaw, we can interrupt this ancient dialogue before it spirals beyond our reach. Think about how remarkable this is. We carry within us the power to step outside our own automatic responses, to observe them like a scientist watching an experiment. This awareness acts as a kind of leverage, a fulcrum that can shift the entire balance between mind and body. When we catch the process early, we become the editor of our own experience rather than just its victim. Now, panic attacks reveal one of the most fascinating misunderstandings in human biology. People gasping for air during panic often believe they need more oxygen, but the real culprit usually hides in plain sight. Carbon dioxide levels in our blood serve as the body's primary signal for breathing urgency. Your brain constantly monitors these levels, using them as a kind of internal alarm system. When anxiety heightens our sensitivity to carbon dioxide, even tiny fluctuations can trigger emergency responses that feel completely out of proportion. The natural instinct is to breathe faster, but this creates a peculiar trap. Rapid breathing actually lowers carbon dioxide too quickly, which leads to dizziness and tingling sensations that feed back into the fear cycle. It's like trying to calm down by shouting. A slow, deliberate exhale works through entirely different pathways. It sends steady, rhythmic signals to the brainstem, essentially communicating that no real danger exists. This isn't about forcing ourselves into artificial calm, but rather about teaching our nervous system to recognize the difference between actual threats and false alarms. The learning happens gradually, one breath at a time, but what strikes researchers as remarkable is how quickly that first shift can begin. A single long exhale can start changing the conversation between body and brain, and remarkably, the brain actually listens. This brings us to one of the more surprising discoveries in human physiology. Scientists have found ways to make invisible processes visible through something called biofeedback. Imagine being able to watch your own stress levels in real time, like checking the temperature on a thermometer. In thermal biofeedback, a tiny sensor measures fingertip temperature, which reflects blood flow just beneath the skin surface. When stress activates our sympathetic nervous system, it tightens small blood vessels, often cooling our fingers without us having any awareness of the change. But when people can observe their temperature fluctuations moment by moment, they begin to notice which thoughts, emotions, or physical sensations cause the readings to drop or climb. With practice, many individuals learn to intentionally increase warmth in their fingertips simply by relaxing specific muscle groups or shifting their attention in particular ways. That warmth represents something profound, a measurable signal of reduced arousal throughout the nervous system. Researchers have explored this approach for stress-related pain and circulation problems because it trains actual regulation rather than mere distraction or wishful thinking. What initially feels like pure imagination becomes concrete, measurable change. The real breakthrough comes from learning control through direct feedback rather than guesswork or hope. Once someone masters this skill, the sensor becomes unnecessary. The body remembers the pathway, like muscle memory, for internal states. This reveals something almost philosophical about human nature. Processes we've always labeled as completely automatic turn out to be trainable with the right kind of neura. Given proper feedback, the mind can learn to influence systems it was never taught it could reach. Athletes have stumbled upon another fascinating aspect of how mental processes shape physical reality. They've discovered they can improve actual strength by rehearsing movements without moving at all. When athletes vividly imagine performing a lift or sprint, brain scans show activation in many of the same regions that fire during real physical movement. The brain practices timing, coordination, and sequencing without any muscle contraction occurring. This mental rehearsal strengthens what researchers call the neural blueprint, the intricate pattern of signals that guides movement. Studies have documented measurable strength gains from imagery alone, particularly when combined with actual physical training. The technique also helps maintain skills during injuries when physical practice becomes impossible. The benefit doesn't come from muscle growth itself, but from clearer, more precise communication between brain and muscle. Elite performers use this principle to reduce errors under high-pressure situations. When they finally execute the movement, it feels familiar, almost as if they've rehearsed it countless times before. This reveals something profound about the nature of strength itself. Physical power isn't only about muscle fibers and their capacity for contraction. It's equally about how confidently and efficiently the nervous system recruits those fibers, how clearly it can transmit its intentions. Training the mind essentially sharpens the signal quality, and when that signal improves, the body often responds with surprising precision. It's as if we've been trying to play beautiful music through a poor quality speaker system, never realizing the problem wasn't with our musical ability, but with the clarity of transmission. Perhaps most mysteriously, Phantom limb pain demonstrates how the brain can create intense suffering without any corresponding tissue damage. After amputation, many people continue experiencing vivid sensations, including severe pain in limbs that no longer exist. This phenomenon reveals the brain's extraordinary capacity to generate real, felt experience independent of physical input from the body. When someone loses a limb, something remarkable happens in their brain. The missing arm or leg can still itch, burn, or feel like it's clenched tight. There's no physical source for these sensations, yet they feel completely real. This tells us something profound about how our minds work. Your brain carries a detailed map of your entire body. Every finger, every toe, every patch of skin has its place in this neural blueprint. When a limb disappears, the map doesn't get the memo right away. It keeps expecting signals from places that no longer exist. Nearby nerve pathways can accidentally trigger these phantom zones, creating vivid experiences of limbs that aren't there. Sometimes this phantom sensation becomes painful. The brain sends movement commands to a missing hand, but no feedback comes back to confirm the action worked. This mismatch confuses the system, and confusion often translates into pain signals. It's like shouting into a void and getting disturbed by the silence. This phenomenon completely changed how scientists think about pain itself. Pain isn't just damage reporting back to headquarters, it's an interpretation. A story your brain tells based on incomplete information. Your brain constructs the experience of pain, which means tissue damage doesn't always predict how much someone will suffer. Two people with identical injuries can have completely different pain experiences. The hopeful side of this discovery is equally fascinating. If brains can create pain without injury, maybe they can also learn to let go of it. The same neural plasticity that maintains phantom limbs might be redirected toward healing. Mirror therapy demonstrates this beautifully. You place a mirror so the reflection of your remaining arm appears where the missing one should be. When you move your real arm, your brain sees both arms moving together in perfect harmony. This simple visual trick can quiet phantom pain, especially when the missing limb feels stuck or cramped. The treatment works because your brain craves consistency. It expects movement commands to match sensory feedback. When that confirmation appears, even through clever reflection, the alarm systems often calm down. Vision turns out to be surprisingly powerful in shaping how we experience our own bodies. This insight sparked the development of virtual reality therapies. Digital limbs controlled by the user's thoughts can provide the missing sensory feedback. These approaches don't fight the brain's expectations, they work with them. Rather than forcing pain to stop, they update the internal maps through gentle consistency. The deeper principle here touches on something fundamental about consciousness itself. Your brain constantly builds a model of reality from fragments of information. When sight, intention, and sensation tell the same story, suffering tends to soften. When they contradict each other, distress follows. Stress affects the brain in similarly concrete ways. Chronic stress actually shrinks parts of the hippocampus over time. This brain region handles memory formation and emotional regulation, two things that suffer when life becomes overwhelming. The culprit is cortisol, your body's stress hormone. In short bursts, cortisol helps you survive emergencies. It sharpens focus, floods muscles with energy, and prepares you for action. But cortisol was designed for brief encounters with danger, not the constant pressure of modern life. When stress becomes a permanent resident, cortisol bathes your brain continuously. This prolonged exposure interferes with cell growth in sensitive areas, like the hippocampus. New neural connections struggle to form, existing pathways can weaken or disappear entirely. Animal studies reveal the physical evidence clearly. Chronically stressed brains show less branching between neurons, fewer new cells being born, and measurable shrinkage in key regions. Human research confirms similar patterns. People who experience long-term stress often show differences in hippocampus size and memory performance. This explains why stress makes thinking feel cloudy. Forming new memories becomes harder when the machinery responsible for memory is under attack. It's not weakness or failure, it's biology responding predictably to environmental pressure. The encouraging news lies in the brain's fundamental nature. Plasticity works in both directions. The same neural flexibility that allows stress damage can also enable healing when conditions improve. Sleep helps restore damaged pathways. Exercise promotes the growth of new brain cells. Therapy provides tools for managing overwhelming thoughts. Supportive relationships buffer against cortisol's harmful effects. Understanding stress as a biological force, not just an emotional state, changes everything. It removes blame and shame from the equation. Your foggy thinking isn't a character flaw. It's a stressed brain protecting itself the only way it knows how. This knowledge also reveals why stress management isn't just about feeling better in the moment. You're literally protecting your brain's ability to learn, remember, and adapt. The parallel between phantom limbs and chronic stress runs deeper than it first appears. Both involve brains stuck in outdated patterns, creating real suffering from incomplete information. Both respond better to gentle redirection than forceful intervention. And both remind us that our minds are far more flexible than we typically imagine. The human body carries within it a remarkable network of chemical messengers that respond to the simplest acts of connection. When someone receives gentle, caring touch, their cortisol levels can drop measurably. This stress hormone, which normally keeps us alert to danger, begins to retreat when the nervous system receives clear signals of safety. The skin itself becomes part of this conversation, housing specialized nerve fibers that detect slow, deliberate contact and send information directly to the brain's emotional centers. These pathways explain something most people have felt, but might not understand. A hand on the shoulder during difficult news, fingers intertwined during a medical procedure, or even brief contact during conversation can shift how pain registers in the body. The sensation doesn't disappear entirely, but the brain interprets it differently when trust and consent create the right conditions. Muscle tension releases, defensive circuits calm, and the whole system adjusts its sensitivity. This process reveals something profound about human physiology. Connection isn't just an emotional experience, it's a biological one. The body literally listens for signs that it isn't facing the world alone. And when those signs arrive through appropriate touch, chemistry changes, posture softens, and perception shifts. Sound carries similar power, particularly the rhythms and tones of familiar voices. Newborn infants demonstrate this most clearly. Their tiny nervous systems haven't yet learned to self-regulate, so they depend entirely on caregivers to help them find balance. When a parent speaks in steady, soothing tones, or when recorded familiar voices play nearby, measurable changes occur in the baby's breathing and heart rate. The infant isn't processing language or meaning. Instead, the nervous system responds to patterns that signal safety and presence. This biological conversation happens below the level of conscious thought. One person's regulated state helps guide another toward stability. Scientists call this co-regulation, and it's happening constantly between humans throughout life, not just in infancy. Adults retain this wiring even as they develop their own internal regulation skills. A trusted voice can still slow breathing, ease tension, and reduce stress responses. This explains why tone often carries more weight than words during emotionally charged moments. Cultures worldwide have discovered that certain sounds, rhythms, and vocal patterns can shape physiology directly. Laughter operates through similar pathways but triggers a different cascade of responses. When people laugh together, their breathing naturally synchronizes. Facial muscles that carry tension begin to release. The brain's attention shifts outward, away from internal monitoring for threats and problems. This shift alone can change how intensely physical sensations register. Research shows that shared laughter releases endorphins, those natural chemicals involved in both bonding and pain management. People who laugh together before experiencing mild discomfort often tolerate it better than those who don't. The social element seems crucial here. Laughing alone doesn't produce the same effect as laughing with others. The group experience signals safety and connection, which allows defensive responses to relax. These discoveries illuminate something important about how the nervous system operates. Pain, stress, and discomfort aren't fixed experiences. They're constantly being modulated by context, meaning, and the presence or absence of connection. The brain maintains built-in capacity to adjust its sensitivity based on environmental cues. Think about what this means for understanding human experience. The same physical sensation can feel entirely different depending on whether someone feels alone or supported, threatened or safe, disconnected or understood. The body doesn't just process these situations mentally. It responds with measurable changes in chemistry, muscle tension, breathing patterns, and pain thresholds. Medical settings have begun incorporating these insights. Simple interventions like hand-holding during procedures, playing familiar music, or ensuring patients hear reassuring voices can improve outcomes and reduce distress. These aren't just comfort measures, they're physiological interventions that work through the body's own regulatory systems. The implications extend far beyond healthcare, though. Every interaction carries potential to influence another person's nervous system state. A gentle touch offered with genuine care, laughter shared authentically, or a voice that conveys stability and presence. These everyday human experiences operate as biological signals that can shift someone's entire physiological landscape. This interconnectedness challenges common assumptions about where one person ends and another begins. If nervous systems can co-regulate, if touch can alter brain chemistry, if voices can change heart rhythms, then human boundaries are more porous than they might appear. People are constantly influencing each other's internal states through the most ordinary interactions. Perhaps this explains why isolation feels so threatening to human well-being and why connection feels so essential. The body has evolved to expect and respond to signals of safety and support from others. When those signals are present, internal systems can relax their vigilance and operate more efficiently. When they're absent, everything must work harder to maintain stability. The human body operates like a vast communication network, where a single nerve acts as the main highway connecting your brain to nearly every organ you can think of. This nerve, stretching from your skull down to your abdomen, carries an endless stream of messages in both directions. When your stomach feels full after dinner, that information travels upward. When your brain decides it's time to digest that meal, commands flow downward. This biological highway responds to your emotional state in fascinating ways. Feel safe and relaxed, and your digestion hums along smoothly, blood flowing generously to your gut. But sense danger, even imagine danger, and your brain instantly redirects that energy elsewhere. Your appetite vanishes, your stomach clenches, all without any conscious decision on your part. Researchers have discovered they can actually influence this system through simple breathing techniques. Slow, deliberate breaths can boost the activity of this crucial nerve, potentially improving mood and stress resilience. Some scientists are even experimenting with electrical stimulation, using tiny currents to treat depression and epilepsy by essentially speaking directly to this neural pathway. What strikes many people as remarkable is how physical sensations transform into emotions to this channel. Your body never stops talking to your mind, sending a constant stream of updates about what's happening below the surface. Those butterflies you feel when nervous, they represent real, measurable activity in your digestive system. Your intestines contain their own sophisticated network of nerve cells, millions of them, working together like a miniature brain. These neurons coordinate digestion locally, sensing when your gut stretches, detecting irritation, monitoring chemical changes. They control the rhythmic waves that push food along your digestive tract, all happening completely outside your awareness. When stress strikes, these waves can accelerate wildly, grind to a halt, or become chaotic and irregular. That dropping sensation in your stomach during moments of fear, that's not just a figure of speech. You're actually feeling the disruption of these carefully orchestrated muscular movements. The twisting, fluttering sensations that accompany strong emotions represent real physical events you can genuinely feel. Your gut also produces chemical messengers, including much of your body's serotonin, the same molecule often associated with happiness and well-being. This doesn't mean your intestines think in any meaningful sense, but they respond to situations with surprising complexity. Scientists sometimes refer to this intestinal network as a second brain, though that's really just a convenient way to describe something far more nuanced. The profound truth here is that emotions always have a physical address in your body. When your mind processes new information or shifts perspective, your gut's nerve network often reacts as if it heard the news directly, without any middleman. Consider how powerfully smell connects to memory and emotion. A single scent can transport you backward through time faster than any photograph ever could. These smell signals take a remarkably direct route into brain regions that handle emotion and memory storage. One breath can resurrect an entire kitchen from childhood, a long-forgotten classroom, or the exact feeling of walking down a particular street in the rain. These memories don't arrive as neat, organized stories. Instead, they come bundled with the original feelings, the context, even your body's state at the time. This happens because smell gets stored alongside all these other elements, creating rich, multi-layered memory packages. Researchers study this phenomenon to understand how memories get reconstructed rather than simply replayed like old movies. Smell influences behavior in subtle ways too, quietly shifting your appetite or sense of comfort. It can make time feel elastic, collapsing years into a single moment. Perfume designers and chefs exploit this emotional shortcut every single day, knowing that the right molecule hitting the right receptor can unlock entire chapters of someone's personal history. Music operates on your body through completely different mechanisms but with equally powerful effects. Rhythm acts like an invitation your body often can't refuse, encouraging your breathing, heartbeat, even your movements to sync up with the beat. Your breathing pattern can drift toward a song's tempo within minutes of listening. Your heart rate shifts too, especially when the music follows predictable, steady patterns. This synchronization, which scientists call entrainment, shows up everywhere from military marching to dance floors. In medical rehabilitation, therapists use rhythmic beats to guide patients' steps when their natural timing feels unreliable. Music shapes emotion, and emotion shapes physiology, so these effects multiply and reinforce each other. A fast tempo can sharpen your alertness and tighten your posture almost immediately. A slow, gentle melody can soften your muscles and extend your exhales. Group singing can align the breathing of dozens of people simultaneously, creating a kind of biological harmony alongside the musical one. Your brain treats rhythm as scaffolding for coordinating timing across multiple body systems. This explains why a skilled drummer can steady an entire room full of people, why certain songs make crowds move together almost automatically. Music isn't just artistic expression, it's a form of biological organization, creating structure that your body willingly inhabits and follows. Movement has its own internal clock, and when that clock gets disrupted, our bodies start to shake. Tremors happen because the circuits that coordinate smooth motion lose their sense of timing. Think about it. Every graceful movement you make depends on precise coordination between different parts of your nervous system. When those parts fall out of sync, the result is that telltale shakiness. But here's where it gets fascinating. You can actually help fix this timing problem from the outside. A steady beat, something as simple as a metronome clicking away, can serve as an external timekeeper for your brain. When your nervous system locks onto that rhythm, it suddenly has a reference point to work with. The commands flowing to your muscles become more evenly spaced, more predictable. This isn't just theory either. People with Parkinson's disease often find they can walk more smoothly when they have rhythmic cues to follow. The beat removes that uncertainty about when to take the next step, when to shift weight, when to stop. Physical therapists have caught on to this, using rhythmic sounds as tools in rehabilitation programs. After someone has a stroke, these audio cues can help retrain their walking patterns. What's really happening is better synchronization across all those motor loops in your brain. Even something as basic as tapping your finger to a beat can sharpen your coordination in simple tasks. Researchers find this compelling because it reveals something profound about how movement works. Every motion is basically prediction, plus correction. Your brain predicts what should happen, then makes tiny adjustments when reality doesn't match up perfectly. A stable rhythm takes care of the prediction part, so your brain doesn't have to work as hard on corrections. The surprising thing is how subtle this influence can be. A simple pulse can reach deep into motor systems that normally feel completely automatic, completely beyond conscious control. This touches on something even more fundamental about how your brain operates. Your brain doesn't actually wait for the world to happen. Instead, it's constantly preparing drafts of what it expects to experience next. Based on everything that's happened before, plus whatever context clues it can gather, your brain creates a rough sketch of incoming sensations. When signals actually arrive from your senses, they get compared to that draft in just fractions of a second. If the match is close enough, your brain fills in the missing details and you experience smooth continuity. If the match is way off, you feel that jolt of surprise. And the whole internal model gets updated. This explains some peculiar things about everyday life, like why you can mishear song lyrics for years, until someone tells you the real words. Or why knowing what wine costs can actually change how it tastes to you. Expectation shapes experience in ways that feel almost magical, but really stem from this constant prediction and correction process. Attention works like a spotlight in all of this, telling your brain which incoming signals deserve the most processing power. Whatever you focus on gets amplified in your final conscious experience. This gives you real power over what you perceive, but it can also lead you astray, creating illusions and false confidence. Scientists have a name for this whole system. They call it predictive processing. It reframes perception as an active construction project, rather than passive recording. Reality is still out there, still real, but your personal experience of it gets built in real time based on your brain's best guesses. Change the prediction, and you can actually change the experience that follows. Motion sickness shows what happens when this prediction system breaks down completely. Your inner ear has these delicate sensors that detect acceleration by tracking how fluid moves through tiny chambers. Your eyes track motion by watching how scenery flows past and noting visual reference points. Your muscles and joints constantly report on pressure and balance through signals about your body's current posture. Normally, these three information streams tell the same basic story, but sometimes they contradict each other dramatically. On a boat, your inner ear feels all that rolling and pitching, while your eyes might be looking around a cabin that appears perfectly still. In a car, your eyes might be focused on reading, while your inner ear detects every turn and lane change. When sensory streams disagree like this, your brain faces an impossible task. It needs to choose one coherent story about what's happening, but the evidence points in completely different directions. Your brain treats this kind of mismatch as a serious warning sign, possibly indicating that something dangerous is affecting your perception. One theory suggests this response evolved because toxins often disrupt sensory processing in confusing ways, so your body responds with nausea as a protective reflex, trying to get rid of whatever might be poisoning you, even when no actual toxin exists. That's why motion sickness can hit so suddenly and feel so overwhelming. Looking at the horizon often provides relief, because it gives all your sensory systems something they can agree on. The deeper lesson here is that your nervous system craves coherence above almost everything else. When perception can't reach consensus, your stomach often ends up paying the price. Optical illusions offer another window into how this whole system works. These visual tricks aren't really about fooling your eyes, they're about exposing the habits of your brain. Your brain relies on shortcuts to interpret light, shadow, and distance quickly enough to be useful. Most of the time, these shortcuts serve you incredibly well, helping you survive and navigate efficiently through a complex world. An illusion is just a special setup where those normally helpful shortcuts produce the wrong answer. Straight lines can appear bent because your brain assumes depth based on surrounding context. Colors look different depending on nearby tones because your brain is constantly making comparisons rather than measuring absolute values. Static patterns can seem to move because your brain expects movement from certain visual configurations. Scientists love studying illusions because they reveal the hidden rules that perception normally follows. They're like getting a peek behind the curtain at your brain's private assumptions about how the world works. Illusions also teach a valuable lesson about humility, because confidence doesn't guarantee accuracy. Your brain can feel absolutely certain about what you're seeing and still be completely wrong. Once you understand that, everyday perception becomes more mysterious and more wonderful. You're not just passively receiving raw reality through your senses. You're actively receiving an interpretation, a sophisticated translation of physical signals into conscious experience. That interpretation is brilliant and fast and usually accurate, but it can also be fooled quite deliberately. And maybe that's not a bug in the system. Maybe it's a feature that allows us to experience a world that's richer and more meaningful than mere physics would suggest. Our minds don't just passively receive what our senses deliver, they actively construct reality from the raw materials our eyes and nerves provide. This construction process reveals something profound about how we experience the world, particularly when it comes to something as fundamental as pain. When you feel in control of a situation, your skin literally feels pain differently. The nervous system has evolved to treat control as a kind of safety signal, and this sense of safety directly changes how pain registers in your brain. It's not just psychological comfort, it's actual biological circuitry at work. Predictability plays a fascinating role in this process. When your brain can predict what's coming next, it often decides that sensation poses less of a threat. Think about how different it feels when you choose to touch something hot versus when you accidentally burn yourself on the same surface. The heat might be identical, but your brain processes these experiences in completely different ways. Scientists have run experiments where people receive the exact same painful stimulus under different conditions. When participants feel they have chosen to experience that stimulus, they tolerate it much better than when it feels imposed on them. The brain can actually amplify pain when something feels forced upon us, as if it's trying to push us away from what it perceives as a dangerous, uncontrollable situation. This isn't weakness or failure of willpower. It's protective biology working exactly as it was designed to work over millions of years of evolution. Our ancestors who could distinguish between controllable and uncontrollable threats had better survival odds, and we've inherited these same neural pathways. Control also works through more indirect channels. When you feel helpless, stress chemistry floods your system in the background, creating tension that makes everything feel worse. That calmer state that comes with feeling in control can reduce muscle guarding, which otherwise increases discomfort throughout your body. Medical professionals have learned to work with these biological realities. They explain procedures clearly and offer choices whenever possible, even small ones like when to begin a treatment. These tiny moments of agency can shift the entire experience, telling your brain that you can handle what's coming. The most fascinating aspect of all this is how meaning itself enters the pain system. The nerves in your skin are just sending electrical signals, like telegraph wires carrying messages. But your brain is the one deciding how urgent those messages are, what they mean, and how much attention they deserve. Agency whispers to your brain, "I can handle this," and that whisper often changes everything. It's not just mind over matter as a motivational slogan, it's mind over matter as a literal neural setting that can be adjusted up or down. Fear creates its own strange alterations to reality, literally shrinking your useful field of view. When you're afraid, your attention gets pushed into a tunnel that aims straight at whatever you perceive as threatening. The edges of your vision don't disappear, but peripheral details become much harder to notice. Even though your eyes are still open and functioning normally, this can make the entire world feel smaller and more urgent within seconds. Your body is preparing for action, and broad environmental scanning becomes less important than laser focus. In genuine danger, this tunnel vision can help you react with life-saving speed, but in modern situations, during meetings or in crowds, or when anxious thoughts spiral, it can work against you. Researchers have discovered that this effect links directly to arousal systems that change how your brain prioritizes sensory information. Your eye movements can become what scientists call stickier, meaning your gaze becomes harder to shift from whatever has captured it. People often report being shocked, later, by obvious things they completely missed, things that were sitting in plain sight the entire time. When fear begins to ease, vision often feels like it's expanding again, like being in a room that suddenly grows larger. This is mind over matter taking concrete, measurable form. Emotion changes perception, and perception changes the decisions you think are available to you. A narrowed view can narrow your options, making escape feel like the only possible plan. But when you manage to widen attention, choices often return. Sometimes choices that were there all along but invisible through the tunnel of fear. High anxiety transforms the body into a kind of surveillance zone where every tiny sensation gets scanned for potential meaning. An anxious mind can turn the most harmless sensations into signals of urgent danger. A mild flutter in your chest, warmth in your face, or slightly shallow breathing can suddenly feel monumentally important, even threatening. Attention locks on to whatever sensation has triggered this alarm, and that focused attention amplifies the sensation, making it feel stronger and more persistent than it actually is. Your brain then launches into detective mode, searching for an explanation for why this sensation feels so important. Unfortunately, when you're already anxious, your brain often lands on danger as the most likely explanation. This interpretation further activates your stress response system. Hormones begin flowing, muscles start tightening, and breathing patterns shift, creating even more sensations for your hypervigilant mind to monitor and worry about. The loop can build with frightening speed, not because anything is actually wrong with your body, but because interpretation keeps feeding physiology, and physiology keeps feeding interpretation. Many panic episodes begin exactly this way, with a completely normal bodily signal that gets misread as an emergency broadcast. The irony is that learning to recognize that urgency doesn't automatically equal danger can begin to loosen this cycle. When sensations are allowed to exist without constant interrogation about their meaning, they often fade naturally on their own, and the nervous system can return to its baseline state of relative calm. The brain has this incredible way of calming itself down, just by putting words to what we feel. When you name an emotion, something remarkable happens inside your head. The amygdala, that ancient alarm system buried deep in your brain, actually starts to quiet down. Scientists can measure this shift, watching as the emotional storm begins to settle. Think about it. Your brain is constantly trying to make sense of the world around you. When feelings surge up without explanation, that alarm center keeps firing, keeps you on high alert. But the moment you say, "I'm anxious," or "I'm frustrated," different parts of your brain jump into action. The language centers wake up, the regulation systems start working. It's like giving your mind a map when it was lost in the dark. The chaos begins to organize itself into something manageable. Brain scans reveal this beautiful dance, showing how amygdala activity drops even while the emotion itself remains. You're still feeling it, but now it's not overwhelming you. There's something profound about this pause that naming creates. Instead of just reacting, you're observing. That tiny moment of distance can completely change what happens next. Children learn this naturally when we teach them. Adults, we can rediscover it when life gets heavy. A few simple words transform raw sensation into useful information. Your nervous system suddenly has coordinates, knows where it is, knows how to respond more gently. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The same physical sensations can feel completely different depending on how we interpret them. Stress, that surge of energy coursing through your body, it's actually designed to help you. Your heart pounds, your mind sharpens, everything speeds up to meet whatever challenge is coming. But if you label all that preparation as dangerous, as harmful, your performance actually gets worse. Worry starts competing with focus. You're fighting your own biology instead of working with it. Research shows something fascinating though. When people learn to see stress differently, to frame it as readiness rather than threat, they perform better. Their bodies look exactly the same, under measurement, heart racing, adrenaline flowing, but their experience transforms completely. Athletes know this secret. Speakers, performers, they've learned to treat those butterflies as a sign that their system is awake and ready. The discomfort stays, but its meaning shifts entirely. Your brain uses that meaning to decide whether to escalate the alarm or settle into focused action. It's like choosing the story your body tells itself. Frame stress as support, as your system getting ready to help you succeed, and suddenly pressure becomes a tool instead of an enemy. Your body has its own reset button, and it's simpler than you might think. A deep sigh, but not just any sigh. This one is special. 2 quick inhales, followed by a long, slow exhale. Scientists call it a physiological sigh, and it does something remarkable to your breathing. Those tiny air spaces in your lungs, they can collapse when you're breathing shallow. When stress has you taking quick, short breaths, that double inhale reopens them, gets everything working properly again. Then comes that long exhale, and it's like flipping a switch. Calming pathways activate, nervous system arousal drops. You can actually feel your muscles softening as your brain gets the message that the emergency has passed. People do this naturally after stressful moments, like the body knows exactly what it needs, but you can use it intentionally too. Interrupt rising panic before it takes over. The beautiful thing about breathing is how directly it connects to your brainstem, to those deep regulatory systems. You don't need to concentrate hard or believe in it for the sigh to work. One well-timed breath can shift your entire rhythm. As that rhythm slows, your mind often follows. There's something carbon dioxide levels, too, how they stabilize during proper breathing. Those feelings of air hunger, that dizzy sensation when anxiety peaks, the sigh helps with all of that. It's your body's built-in wisdom, waiting there whenever you need it. Here's something you definitely can't control: blushing. Your face becomes this canvas for your emotions, whether you want it to or not. Blood vessels in your cheeks, your ears, sometimes your neck, they suddenly widen when social emotions hit. The trigger is often just attention itself, as if being noticed becomes a physical event. Heat floods your face within seconds sometimes. You might try to will it away, but this response completely bypasses conscious control. Some researchers think blushing serves a purpose though, that it's your body's way of signaling social awareness, like wearing your recognition of a mistake right there on your skin. It's this rare emotion that writes itself directly onto your face, for everyone to see. Even more strange, just imagining an awkward moment can sometimes trigger the same flush. Your mind conjures a scene, and your body responds as if it's happening right now. There's something almost philosophical about blushing, this involuntary honesty that your nervous system displays. In a world where we can control so much of how we present ourselves, here's one response that stays beautifully, embarrassingly human. Our bodies speak a language we never learned, translating thoughts into blood flow in ways that would astonish any engineer. When embarrassment strikes, tiny vessels beneath facial skin dilate within milliseconds, flooding cheeks with warmth, before consciousness even catches up. The face contains intricate networks of capillaries, each one responding to neural commands faster than we can process what's happening to us. Blood vessels open and close like microscopic gates, controlled by the autonomic nervous system. This same system manages breathing, digestion, and countless other functions without any input from our thinking minds. During social moments that trigger shame or awkwardness, nerve signals race through these pathways, redirecting circulation toward the surface of our skin. The result is blushing, that involuntary beacon of internal turmoil. Some individuals flush easily, while others remain pale through the most mortifying experiences, yet the underlying machinery remains identical. The difference lies in sensitivity thresholds, genetic variations that determine how readily these vascular responses activate. Trying to suppress a blush often backfires spectacularly. Attention becomes locked onto the very reaction we're attempting to hide, creating feedback loops that intensify the response. The harder we fight against it, the more pronounced it becomes, like trying to forget a song by concentrating on not humming it. In social contexts, blushing serves as an unexpected form of communication. It signals awareness of transgression, broadcasting concern for group norms without requiring words. This visible vulnerability can actually invite forgiveness, showing others that we recognize and care about social boundaries. The speed of these reactions reveals something profound about human nature. We're wired to respond to social meaning as powerfully as we respond to physical threats. Reputation, belonging, and acceptance aren't abstract concepts. They're forces that literally move blood through our bodies, changing our appearance in real time. Meanwhile, other reflexes operate on even faster timescales. The startle response can jolt your entire body into action before your brain has processed what's happening. A sudden noise triggers muscle contractions within milliseconds, following pathways through the brainstem that bypass conscious thought entirely. Eyes snap shut, shoulders hunch upward, and limbs brace for impact. These movements complete themselves before awareness arrives to ask questions. The sequence reveals something remarkable about the relationship between mind and body. Action doesn't always follow thought. Sometimes it precedes it entirely. Evolution favored speed over accuracy in these systems. Ancient environments punished hesitation more severely than false alarms, so natural selection built reflexes that err on the side of caution. Even harmless sounds can trigger full defensive responses, because the cost of overreacting was historically much lower than the cost of underreacting. Anxiety amplifies these responses, tuning sensitivity higher when we're already on edge. Researchers measure startle reflexes to understand fear and vigilance, finding that much of our behavior operates below the threshold of awareness. The conscious mind often narrates events after the body has already responded, creating stories to explain actions that were never consciously chosen. This reveals a fascinating truth about human experience. We're not the unified, rational decision-makers we imagine ourselves to be. Instead, we're collections of interconnected systems, each operating on different timescales and following different priorities. Your heartbeat contributes to this complex symphony in ways you've probably never considered. Each pulse sends information to the brain about your internal state, and this cardiac data influences how you interpret external events. During emotional moments, heartbeat signals blend with sensory information from your environment. Research suggests that fear cues feel more intense during certain phases of the cardiac cycle. Your brain combines outside information with inside timing, weaving them together into unified experiences. A racing heart can make neutral situations feel threatening, even when nothing in your surroundings has actually changed. This helps explain why anxiety often spikes after consuming caffeine, during illness, or following poor sleep. These conditions alter heart rhythm, which in turn influences emotional interpretation. When cardiac patterns stabilize, emotions typically feel less urgent and overwhelming. Breathing exercises work partly by modifying heart rhythm variability. Slow, controlled breathing encourages the heart to settle into more regular patterns, which sends calming signals to emotional processing centers. The practice doesn't just relax muscles, it actively reshapes the internal landscape that emotions emerge from. Scientists call this internal sensing interoception, the perception of your body from within. Most people remain unaware of these constant streams of information flowing from organs to brain. Yet these signals profoundly shape conscious experience. Emotions aren't simply thoughts about the world. They're constructions built from perception plus pulse, breathing plus interpretation. The cardiovascular system contributes continuously to the stories your mind tells about what's happening around you. People regularly misread their own emotional states when their pulse is artificially altered. In laboratory studies, elevated heart rates lead participants to judge situations as more intense or significant. They're not making deliberate mistakes. Their interpretation is being influenced by bodily feedback they can't consciously access. This phenomenon extends beyond controlled experiments. After exercise, during fever, or following strong coffee, the body shifts into different states that prime the mind toward particular emotional explanations. Physical activation comes first, then consciousness supplies matching narratives. Understanding these processes can reduce the power of panic attacks. A racing pulse doesn't automatically signal danger. Sometimes it simply reflects physiology, responding to non-threatening stimuli. When cardiac activity settles, emotional storms often clear as well, revealing how deeply our feelings depend on the rhythmic foundation beating within our chests. The brain's perception of faces shifts dramatically when the stomach empties. Neutral expressions suddenly appear hostile, dismissive, even threatening. This happens because hunger triggers ancient survival circuits that scan constantly for danger. The same colleague, who looked perfectly friendly at lunch, might seem irritated or angry by late afternoon when blood sugar drops. Scientists have a term for this phenomenon: misattribution. The brain mistakenly assigns internal feelings to external sources. An empty stomach creates a lens of suspicion that colors everything. Social interactions feel more tense. Conversations seem more loaded with meaning. Simple glances feel personal and pointed. This mechanism makes evolutionary sense, really. Hungry ancestors needed to be more vigilant, more ready for conflict when resources ran low. The brain that prepared for trouble was more likely to survive. Modern life rarely requires such heightened alertness, but the wiring remains unchanged. What's fascinating is how quickly this effect reverses itself. A snack, a proper meal, and suddenly the same faces look ordinary again. The hostile coworker transforms back into a neutral presence. The threatening stranger becomes just another person walking by. Nothing changed except fuel levels, yet social reality completely shifted. This reveals something profound about human perception. We experience the world as fixed, objective, unchanging. But actually, our internal state constantly shapes what we see, hear, feel. The body's needs become the mind's filter, usually without any conscious awareness. Sleep deprivation creates its own distortions, particularly around pain and discomfort. After a short night, minor aches feel amplified. Small problems seem overwhelming. The body's pain signals grow louder, more insistent, harder to dismiss. Meanwhile, the brain's ability to cope weakens significantly. This happens through multiple pathways simultaneously. Sleep helps regulate inflammation throughout the body, keeping pain signals at normal levels. It also maintains the brain's natural pain dampening systems, like internal switches that turn down discomfort. Without proper rest, these systems falter. Emotional regulation suffers too. Tired brains have fewer resources for reframing difficulties, less patience for minor irritations. What might normally be brushed off becomes sticky, persistent, heavy. Negative emotions linger longer than they should, creating a cycle where pain increases while coping ability decreases. The research reveals something hopeful though. Sleep restoration can dramatically shift this balance. One solid night doesn't fix everything, but it noticeably changes how the same body experiences the following day. Pain signals return to normal levels, emotional resilience rebuilds itself, minor stressors shrink back to appropriate size. Even more intriguing is what happens when people simply believe they slept well. In carefully controlled experiments, researchers tell participants they had excellent sleep, even when measurements show otherwise. The results are remarkable. People report feeling sharper, more alert, significantly more capable. Their actual performance improves too, as if belief alone unlocked hidden potential. Test scores go up, reaction times get faster, memory works better. This isn't just positive thinking, it's measurable change in brain function, based purely on expectation. The mechanism seems to involve attention and effort allocation. When you believe you're well rested, you stop constantly monitoring for fatigue signals. Energy that would normally go toward self-assessment gets redirected toward actual tasks. Confidence reduces the mental overhead of wondering whether you can handle challenges. This doesn't mean sleep becomes optional, of course. The body still requires genuine recovery for long-term health. But it reveals how much the experience of tiredness involves interpretation, not just biology. The brain tells itself a story about incoming signals, and when that story changes, behavior follows. It's a striking example of how belief shapes reality, not by creating energy from nothing, but by changing how efficiently you access existing resources. The tired brain that thinks it's alert may actually become more alert through that very thinking. These effects point toward a deeper truth about human experience. We assume our perceptions reflect objective reality, but actually they emerge from complex interactions between body and mind, expectation and sensation, need and interpretation. The world we experience is always, in some sense, a collaboration between what's actually there and what we bring to the encounter. This has practical implications for daily life. Sometimes what feels like an unfriendly world might just be a hungry brain asking for fuel. Sometimes overwhelming problems might be sleep-deprived, thinking, making mountains from molehills. Sometimes low energy might be belief about low energy rather than actual depletion. Understanding these mechanisms offers a kind of freedom. When you recognize that perception is fluid, changeable, dependent on internal state, you gain some distance from immediate experience. That angry face might not be angry at all. That overwhelming problem might shrink with proper rest. That persistent pain might quiet with better sleep. The boundary between mind and body proves more porous than we typically imagine. Physical needs shape mental experience, while mental expectations influence physical performance. Neither operate independently. They dance together in ways that constantly surprise researchers who study these phenomena. The sleeping brain becomes this fascinating workshop where tomorrow's challenges get their first rehearsal. When you're lying there completely still, your mind might actually be running through scenarios, testing out responses to situations you haven't even faced yet. It's almost like having a private training ground that opens up every night. Dreams carry this peculiar mix of the bizarre and the deeply familiar. You might find yourself in some impossible landscape, but the emotions feel so real, so recognizable. That panic of being chased, the frustration of being late for something important, the sinking feeling when you've lost something precious. These emotional patterns seem to surface again and again across different people's dreams. Sleep researchers think this might be the brain's way of practicing danger without any actual risk involved. Your mind gets to explore fear, work through problems, test different solutions, all while your body stays safely in bed. It's like having access to a simulator that runs exclusively at night. During specific phases of sleep, something remarkable happens with memory. The brain starts replaying experiences from the day, but it doesn't just replay them exactly. It mixes them up, combines old memories with fresh information, reorganizes everything in new ways. This process might be what helps you spot patterns more easily when you're awake. Why solutions sometimes seem clearer after a good night's sleep. Many people notice their worries feel different in the morning, less sharp somehow, as if the mind spent those quiet hours slowly processing whatever was troubling them. The anxiety might still be there, but it's been digested, transformed into something more manageable. Nightmares represent the darker side of this nightly practice session. Especially after traumatic experiences, the brain can get stuck replaying the same frightening scenarios over and over. But even then, there are ways to work with this process. Therapists have developed techniques that help people reshape their dream narratives, and over time, this can actually reduce the distress. The deeper mystery here is that while your body lies motionless, your brain might be preparing you for tomorrow's emotional challenges. It's practicing moves you don't even know you'll need yet. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Some people can actually become aware that they're dreaming while the dream is still happening. This rare state, called lucid dreaming, opens up incredible possibilities for communication between the sleeping and waking worlds. Scientists figured out a clever way to prove when someone becomes lucid without waking them up. During dream sleep, most of your body's muscles are essentially paralyzed, but your eyes can still move freely. So researchers work out a simple agreement with lucid dreamers beforehand, a specific pattern of eye movements, like sweeping left and right in a particular sequence. When these eye signals show up on the lab equipment, it's like receiving a message from inside the dream world, a sleeping brain deliberately communicating with scientists in the waking world. It's this breathtaking moment where two different states of consciousness make contact. This suggests that the parts of your mind responsible for self-awareness don't completely shut down during sleep. They can actually switch back on, even while you're dreaming. People use lucid dreaming for all sorts of things, exploring creative ideas, confronting recurring nightmares, even practicing skills in incredibly vivid mental imagery. The important point isn't the fantasy aspect. It's the evidence that consciousness isn't just on or off. It has different levels, different modes of operation. For those brief moments, you become both the actor and the audience in your own nighttime theater. The brain's ability to generate sensory experiences from the inside reveals something profound about how perception actually works. Close your eyes right now and imagine the smell of fresh coffee brewing. You might notice your mouth starting to react, even though there's no actual coffee anywhere nearby. Brain imaging studies show that when people imagine smells, some of the same regions that process real odors become active. The signal is usually weaker than what you'd get from an actual scent, but it's still there, still meaningful. This is part of why memories can feel so physical, so present in your body. The brain stores sensory experiences in these complex networks that can be reactivated just by thinking about them. Professional perfumers and chefs often develop this ability to an extraordinary degree. They build these vast internal libraries of scents and flavors that they can call up and manipulate mentally. This also helps explain why cravings can feel so powerful. When you imagine a particular food, your brain starts preparing your body for it, activating some of the same pathways as if you were actually about to eat. The fascinating realization here is that perception isn't just about information coming in from the outside world. Your brain can generate sensory-like states from within, using memory as its raw material. Once you understand this, imagination starts to feel less like pretending and more like a controlled activation of real neural networks. It makes you wonder about the boundary between what's real and what's constructed. Your brain is constantly building your experience of reality, whether you're awake or asleep, whether the stimulus is external or internal. In a sense, you're always living inside a kind of controlled hallucination, one that usually corresponds pretty well to what's actually out there, but not always. The human brain processes imagined brightness as if it were almost real. When you visualize a brilliant scene, something remarkable happens inside your skull. Your pupils might actually shrink a tiny bit, just as they would when facing genuine light. This isn't happening to everyone, and the change is subtle, but it reveals something profound about how our minds work. The brain doesn't just think about light, it prepares the body for what it expects to encounter. This pupil response happens automatically, without any conscious effort. It's your nervous system getting ready for conditions that exist only in your imagination. People with vivid mental imagery tend to show this effect more strongly than others. This phenomenon tells us that imagination isn't separate from the body's basic functions. When you picture sunlight bouncing off fresh snow, or imagine staring at a phone screen in a dark bedroom, your pupils might respond as if that brightness is nearly there. Your mind treats these mental images as rehearsals for reality. The whole process fits into a larger picture of how imagination works. What we call mental imagery is really internal perception, built from stored sensory memories and predictions about what might happen next. The brain simulates experiences so thoroughly that the body starts to believe them, at least partially. Athletes have discovered something interesting about breathing through the nose instead of the mouth. This simple change can make exercise feel less exhausting over time. Nasal breathing creates more resistance than mouth breathing, which naturally slows down each breath and makes it deeper. When air moves through the nose, it gets warmed and moistened before reaching the lungs. This is especially helpful when training in cold or dry environments. The slower rhythm that comes with nasal breathing also helps maintain steadier levels of carbon dioxide in the blood. Many coaches use nasal breathing as a natural pace controller. If an athlete can only breathe through their nose, they can't push into that frantic, unsustainable zone where everything falls apart. The result is often better endurance and faster recovery between intense efforts. This isn't magic, and it doesn't replace good old-fashioned conditioning, but it does show how technique can influence physiology in subtle ways. By consciously choosing how to breathe and sticking with that pattern, athletes can guide their nervous system toward calmer, more efficient control. The ripple effects are surprisingly broad. A small adjustment at the entrance to the airway can influence heart rate, mental focus, and how difficult the exercise actually feels. It's a perfect example of how the mind and body are constantly talking to each other. Carbon dioxide plays a much more important role in breathing than most people realize. We tend to think of it as just waste that needs to be expelled, but it's actually a powerful signal that tells us when to take the next breath. When CO2 levels rise, that's what creates the urgent feeling of needing air. Many people assume they're running low on oxygen when they feel that air hunger, but usually it's the carbon dioxide buildup that's causing the discomfort. This is where breath training becomes fascinating. Through specific practices, people can gradually become less sensitive to rising carbon dioxide levels. Slow breathing exercises, controlled breath holding, and carefully paced exhaling all teach the brain that higher carbon dioxide isn't necessarily dangerous. Over time, that urgent need to gasp becomes less overwhelming. The breathing stays smoother, even under stress. This principle shows up in free diving, where athletes need to stay calm underwater for extended periods. It's also used in singing training, where performers need steady breath control. Some anxiety treatments use similar techniques, since breathing and emotional state are closely connected. The remarkable thing is that you're not really training your lungs. You're training your brain's interpretation of the signals it receives. The body still monitors carbon dioxide levels just as carefully as before, but the alarm threshold shifts. The sensation becomes less frightening, less urgent. This change can be surprisingly empowering. When the internal alarm system isn't constantly going off, it becomes possible to stay calm for longer periods. And staying calm actually improves breathing efficiency, creating a positive feedback loop. Cold water provides another window into how attention shapes physical experience. The first time most people enter truly cold water, the response is immediate and intense. The body wants to tense up, gasp for air, and get out as quickly as possible. But experienced cold water swimmers describe something different, not because the water becomes any warmer, but because their relationship with the sensation changes over time. They learn to direct their attention in specific ways, focusing on steady breathing patterns or keeping their shoulders relaxed. Instead of getting caught up in a mental story about suffering, they pay attention to the actual boundaries of the sensation. This shifts the emotional component of the cold experience, which can dramatically change how intense it feels overall. The brain gradually learns that cold doesn't automatically equal danger. It stops amplifying the signal quite so urgently. Some of this adaptation happens in the body's physiology, but a significant part is really training in perception and attention. You can hear this shift in how experienced swimmers talk about cold exposure. They acknowledge the sensation, then they settle into it, and eventually their body stops sending quite so many alarm signals. The cold is still there, but the distress response becomes much quieter. This matters because psychological distress amplifies physical sensation. When you can reduce the emotional intensity, you actually turn down the volume on the physical experience. It's a vivid demonstration that attention isn't just passively receiving information. Our focus actively shapes what we feel and how strongly we feel it. Pain has this peculiar relationship with meaning that reveals something profound about how our minds work. When we're focused on something that truly matters to us, the same physical sensation can feel completely different. A marathon runner pushing through mile 20 experiences agony, but that agony gets filtered through their purpose, their goal, their reason for being there in the first place. The brain constantly performs this delicate calculation, weighing the cost of what we're experiencing against the value of what we're trying to achieve. It's like having an internal accountant who's always asking, is this worth it? And remarkably, when the answer is yes, the ledger changes. The pain doesn't vanish, but it stops demanding center stage in our awareness. This isn't just psychology, it's biology in action. When people connect their recovery to something meaningful, their nervous system actually becomes less protective over time. Think about it. Meaning acts like a natural painkiller. Not by numbing us, but by giving our attention somewhere else to go. Instead of scanning every sensation for threats, the mind has a destination, a purpose to anchor itself to: rumination. The endless loop of worrying about pain feeds on empty mental space. When there's no clear direction, discomfort expands to fill every corner of our awareness, but purpose crowds out that amplification, leaving less room for suffering to take root and grow. The way treatments look and feel can change how well they work, which opens up fascinating questions about reality and perception. When a procedure appears dramatic, involves complex equipment, or follows elaborate protocols, something shifts in how we process the experience. Our brains treat these theatrical elements as signals that something significant is happening. This response runs deeper than simple suggestion. The nervous system reads ceremony and ritual as meaningful events, adjusting its defensive posture accordingly. A pill taken from an impressive machine carries different weight than the same pill handed over casually. The context becomes part of the medicine itself. Studies reveal that fake procedures sometimes work better than inactive pills, not because deception is good, but because elaborate rituals speak a language our biology understands. The body prepares differently when it senses that serious attention is being paid to its condition. This doesn't mean we should chase spectacle for its own sake. Rather, it suggests that care, attention, and clear structure have measurable effects on healing. The environment we create around treatment becomes an ingredient in the process, influencing outcomes in ways we're only beginning to understand. A doctor's confidence radiates outward in ways that change the entire dynamic of healing. When someone we trust speaks with steady certainty, our nervous system often responds before any actual treatment begins. That immediate calming effect can reduce muscle tension and dial down the stress response that tends to amplify discomfort. Confidence shapes expectation, and expectation acts like a lens that focuses our attention. If we expect things to worsen, we become hypervigilant, scanning constantly for signs of trouble. But when we expect improvement, or at least a clear path forward, we notice different things. We spot progress rather than decline, hope rather than despair. Research consistently shows that healthcare providers who combine warmth with clarity achieve better outcomes. This isn't about bedside manner as a nice extra, it's about safety signals that reach deep into our biology. A calm voice, a clear timeline, and genuine partnership can shift how the body prepares for what's coming next. Even small reductions in fear can cascade through multiple systems, changing breathing patterns, digestion, and pain sensitivity. Trust literally becomes a biological ingredient in the healing process, as real and measurable as any pharmaceutical intervention. Perhaps most remarkably, placebos can sometimes work even when people know they're placebos. This seems to defy logic at first glance, but it reveals something profound about learning and conditioning. Our bodies spend decades associating certain rituals with relief. Taking a pill, following a routine, engaging with the process of treatment, all of these become cues that can shift our internal state. The nervous system learns these patterns so deeply that conscious knowledge doesn't always override them. It's like how your mouth might water when you smell your favorite food, even when you're not actually hungry. The response happens automatically, below the level of rational thought. Open-label placebo studies also restore something crucial, a sense of agency and participation in one's own care. When people feel helpless, pain and fatigue tend to amplify, but when they become active participants in an experiment, even one they know involves no active treatment, that shift from passive victim to engaged collaborator can change everything. This doesn't replace proper medical care, and it certainly doesn't work for every condition. But it does suggest that healing involves more than just targeting specific symptoms with specific chemicals. The patterns we create, the meaning we construct, and the relationships we build all become part of the medicine itself. The boundary between mind and body, between psychological and physical, turns out to be far more porous than we once imagined. Our thoughts, expectations, and purposes don't just influence how we feel about our symptoms, they help determine what those symptoms actually are, how intense they become, and how long they persist. The way our brains process sensation tells a remarkable story about prediction and protection. Your nervous system doesn't wait passively for pain to arrive. It actively forecasts what's coming based on whatever information it can gather. This forecasting system explains why certain words can actually change how much something hurts. When someone mentions that a procedure might sting, your brain immediately begins preparing for danger. Muscles start to tense up, your breathing pattern shifts, attention zeroes in on the threatened body part. The exact same physical stimulus can feel significantly more intense because your nervous system has essentially turned up its sensitivity dial. It's fascinating how language becomes part of the physical experience rather than just describing it. Medical professionals have discovered that switching to gentler terminology, combined with clear explanations of timing, often leads to reports of reduced discomfort. This isn't about deceiving anyone or sugarcoating reality. It's about recognizing that words become ingredients in the recipe of sensation. Pain exists partly as an interpretation of meaning, and meaning gets shaped by the specific phrases we encounter. Parents witness this phenomenon constantly when preparing children for medical procedures. A frightening description can escalate fear long before any needle appears. The brain treats descriptions almost like preview experiences, building expectations that influence what actually gets felt later. Your skin can start itching from nothing more than suggestion. Itch serves as a protective mechanism, so your brain prioritizes it as urgent information. Someone might describe crawling insects or mention a spreading rash, and suddenly you notice prickling sensations when nothing has actually touched you. The urge to scratch feels completely authentic because suggestion can prime your brain to search for threats, and that searching process itself generates real sensation. Once scratching begins, skin sensitivity often increases, which strengthens the entire loop. This explains why itch can feel so persistent in certain conditions, where anxiety and focused attention keep feeding the cycle. Researchers find itch particularly revealing because it shows prediction systems in action. Your brain would rather trigger a false alarm than miss a genuine irritant that could cause harm. The encouraging aspect is that attention training and reinterpreting the threat story can reduce intensity. When the narrative of danger relaxes, sensations often soften along with it. The same mind that creates itch can learn to quiet it. Watching someone scratch can trigger itching in your own skin, even when everything felt fine moments earlier. This contagious quality of itch demonstrates how powerfully our brains use mirroring systems to simulate what others are experiencing. Those simulations can spill over into actual sensation through a process that serves protective purposes. If someone nearby reacts as though there's an irritant present, your brain may prepare you to remove that same potential threat. Attention amplifies this effect, especially when you start focusing on and checking specific body parts. This explains why discussing lice or mosquitoes can make an entire group of people start squirming simultaneously. The sensations are genuine, even when the cause isn't actually there. You're not choosing to imagine anything. You're running an ancient prediction system that sometimes overreacts to keep you safe. What makes this truly remarkable is how perception alone can become a trigger. What you witness outside can transform into something you feel inside your own body. Some people feel nauseous or dizzy when they see blood or watch someone get injured. This reaction can arrive instantly, long before any deliberate thought has time to form. Your brain carries detailed maps of the body that help you understand movement and sensation. When you observe an injury, those maps can activate as if danger is approaching you directly. In certain individuals, this triggers a vasovagal response that lowers both heart rate and blood pressure. That sudden drop can cause nausea, sweating, and a fading sensation. It represents a protective reflex that would reduce blood loss if you were actually injured, even though you're only observing someone else's situation. Empathy likely contributes to this effect because the brain simulates what the other person might be feeling. Smell and shock can intensify the response, making the scene feel even more urgent and immediate. The encouraging news is that this response can be trained and modified over time. Gradual exposure combined with breathing control techniques can reduce the intensity, proving that these patterns can be rewired through practice. When you bump your elbow, your hand often moves there automatically to rub the spot. This instinctive response has solid neurological reasoning behind it. Touch signals travel quickly through your nervous system, and they can actually compete with pain signals at the level of the spinal cord. When touch input increases, less pain information successfully reaches the brain, so the overall experience can soften. This process is called gating, and it represents one of the simplest forms of pain modulation that your body employs. Rubbing also introduces movement and warmth, which can reduce stiffness and fear around the affected area. Fear plays a significant role because worry can amplify pain sensitivity throughout the entire system. Children demonstrate this principle beautifully when a comforting touch changes their reaction within seconds. You can observe the same fundamental mechanism at work in massage therapy and various pressure-based treatments. The pain isn't fake, and the relief isn't imagination. It's the nervous system actively changing the balance of incoming information. Sensation can be used to reshape other sensations, and your body learned this principle long before you were consciously aware of it. The relationship between stress and physical healing reveals another layer of mind-body connection. When stress levels remain elevated, wound healing processes can slow down significantly, showing how emotional states directly influence physical recovery. Stress acts like a construction manager who keeps changing the schedule. Your immune system normally follows a careful timeline for healing, but stress hormones, especially cortisol, can throw that timing completely off track. When researchers give people small, standardized cuts, those who are dealing with high stress heal noticeably slower than their calmer counterparts. Think about how remarkable this is. Your emotional state can literally change how fast your skin knits itself back together. The body has this ancient priority system built in, where immediate survival always wins over long-term maintenance. It made perfect sense when our ancestors faced short bursts of danger, but now we live in a world where the stress never really stops. Sleep becomes another piece of this puzzle. Your body does most of its repair work while you're unconscious, almost like a night shift crew fixing roads when traffic is light. Disrupt that sleep, and the repair crews can't do their job properly. Your appetite changes too, because rebuilding tissue requires energy and nutrients, but a stressed body often doesn't feel like eating properly. What's fascinating is that this isn't some character flaw or personal weakness. It's actually a sophisticated biological strategy that's just running way too long. Your body is essentially saying, I need to be ready to run or fight, so I'm going to put the renovation projects on hold. The encouraging part comes when you realize that safety signals can flip this whole process around. Social support measurably reduces stress hormone levels. Good rest literally restores the rhythms your repair systems need. Mind over matter stops being just a saying and becomes something you can actually measure in recovery speed. Your immune system is constantly listening to your nervous system, adjusting its efforts based on what it hears. When the nervous system says everything is fine, the immune system can focus on its housekeeping duties. When it hears alarm signals, resources get redirected toward more immediate concerns. Optimism shows up in medical studies as something that genuinely affects recovery rates after certain surgeries. Now, optimism isn't some magical force, but it does change your biology through a chain of behaviors and physiological responses. People who expect good outcomes tend to engage more actively with their rehabilitation. They move sooner, practice their exercises more consistently, and their brains scan for signs of progress rather than constantly looking for things going wrong. This shift in attention actually reduces the stress responses that would otherwise mess with sleep and appetite. Better rest and steadier nutrition create an environment where healing can proceed more smoothly across multiple body systems. Optimism also tends to reduce rumination, that endless mental replaying of worries that quietly amplifies both pain and fatigue. Some studies show that people with hopeful outlooks do better after certain medical procedures, though the results vary depending on the specific condition and circumstances. The pattern makes biological sense because your mindset shapes the choices you make, and those choices shape the environment your body is trying to heal in. A hopeful person might breathe more steadily, carry less physical tension, and avoid that protective guarding behavior around a healing area that can actually slow recovery. This isn't about blaming anyone who struggles with maintaining optimism during difficult times. It's about recognizing that outlook can be another tool in the recovery toolkit. Your thoughts guide your actions, and your actions literally shape how well your body can repair itself. Adrenaline can temporarily unlock what feels like superhuman abilities. In a genuine emergency, your body has this incredible override mode that can feel almost supernatural when it kicks in. Adrenaline shoots out from your adrenal glands and floods through your bloodstream, like a chemical alarm system. It tells your heart to pump harder and your airways to open wider. Blood gets redirected away from digestion and toward your large muscles. Stored fuel gets dumped into your system for immediate use. At the same time, pain signals get turned way down because survival requires movement more than comfort. This is why you hear stories of people running on broken bones or lifting cars off trapped victims. Their bodies temporarily prioritized action over accurate damage assessment. The boost comes with a price, though. Afterward, your hands might shake, your digestion stalls out, and fatigue can hit like a freight train once the perceived danger passes. But it's absolutely astounding that a thought, a moment of fear or determination, can call up such a powerful chemical response. Your body carries these emergency reserves all the time, and your mind essentially holds the key that can release them. Stage fright demonstrates how quickly your thoughts can reach into your physical systems and start making changes. The moment you feel like you're being watched or evaluated, your body begins making resource trade-offs. Saliva production is part of the digestive system, and digestion immediately gets deprioritized when your brain detects a potential threat. Your mouth becomes dry and sticky. Your tongue might feel thick and heavy. Swallowing becomes more frequent and deliberate, and speech can suddenly feel awkward and clumsy. This response isn't a sign of weakness or inadequacy. It's a protective program that evolved for situations where you'd need to run or fight, not stand in front of microphones or navigate meeting rooms. Stage fright also tightens the muscles in your throat, which changes your voice tone and reduces breath support for speaking. Many experienced performers learn to work with these responses rather than against them. They warm up their voices beforehand, keep water nearby, and focus on slowing their exhale before speaking. Some even learn to reinterpret that familiar dryness as a signal that their body is getting ready for peak performance. What's truly fascinating is how quickly social pressure translates into biological changes. A room full of eyes can reach into your salivary glands without physically touching you. The boundary between psychology and physiology dissolves completely in these moments. You can actually learn to influence your pulse rate through conscious breathing techniques. The human heart exists in constant conversation with our breathing, connected through ancient reflex pathways that evolved millions of years ago. Each inhale tends to nudge the heart rate upward, each exhale gently coaxes it back down. This dance happens without our conscious awareness, yet we can learn to conduct this internal orchestra through something as simple as breath timing. When we deliberately stretch our exhales and maintain steady rhythm, something remarkable occurs. The heart begins to follow this slower tempo, like a metronome finding its beat. Professional singers discover this secret early, using controlled breathing to maintain perfect pitch under stage lights. Marksmen rely on it to steady their aim between heartbeats. Olympic archers will time their release to that quiet moment between breaths, when the body becomes perfectly still. The deeper truth here touches on something profound about human nature. We often believe our emotions must change before our bodies can calm down, but the reverse pathway works too. Start with the breath, and the mind follows. It suggests that self-control might be less about willpower and more about understanding rhythm. Most of us experience goosebumps as something that happens to us, not something we do. Cold air hits our skin, or a beautiful piece of music moves us, and suddenly those tiny muscles at the base of each hair follicle contract in unison. The skin ripples, hairs stand on end, and we feel that distinctive tingling sensation cascade across our arms or down our spine. But scattered around the world, certain individuals possess an unusual talent. They can summon goosebumps at will, simply by shifting their attention inward and focusing on specific areas like the back of their neck or scalp. Scientists studying this rare ability have found something fascinating. These people seem able to reach across the supposed barrier between conscious control and automatic body functions. This challenges our basic assumptions about where voluntary control ends and involuntary reflexes begin. The autonomic nervous system was thought to operate independently, like a building's electrical system, humming away behind the walls. Yet here we find evidence that attention itself might serve as a bridge, allowing conscious intention to influence systems we never knew we could touch. Balance emerges from an intricate negotiation happening constantly inside our heads. The inner ear contains tiny crystals floating in fluid, reporting every tilt and turn. Our eyes scan the horizon, providing visual reference points. Muscles throughout the body send constant updates about joint position and weight distribution. The brain must synthesize all this information into a coherent sense of where we are in space. Yoga practice deliberately challenges this delicate system. Standing poses that teeter on the edge of wobble force rapid recalibration. Slow transitions from one position to another require constant micro-adjustments. The brain learns to trust and coordinate its various sensory inputs more efficiently, like a conductor learning to hear each instrument in an orchestra. What appears as simple stretching from the outside masks intense neural activity within. The nervous system continuously updates its internal map of the body's position. Small stabilizing muscles in the feet, hips, and core grow stronger and more responsive. But perhaps most importantly, the integration between different sensory systems becomes more seamless. Tai Chi presents a different approach to the same fundamental challenge. Those flowing, dance-like movements that appear almost meditative actually demand extraordinary precision from the nervous system. Weight shifts gradually from one foot to the other, requiring constant awareness of the body's center of mass. Each gesture unfolds in slow motion, giving the brain time to register and respond to subtle changes in balance. This practice particularly benefits older adults, whose risk of falling increases as proprioception, that sense of body position, naturally declines with age. The slow, controlled movements of Tai Chi rebuild this internal awareness, while strengthening the network of small muscles responsible for maintaining stability. Research consistently shows that regular Tai Chi practice reduces fall risk, sometimes dramatically. The philosophy embedded in these movements offers its own wisdom. Rather than meeting imbalance with tension and resistance, Tai Chi teaches yielding and adaptation. When stability is threatened, the trained practitioner learns to flow with the disturbance rather than fighting it. This reduces those sudden, jerky corrections that often lead to falls. The broader lesson extends beyond physical balance into the realm of how we adapt to life's inevitable disruptions. There's something profound in learning that stability doesn't come from rigidity, but from responsive flexibility. The bamboo bends in the storm while the oak tree breaks. Human touch maps in the brain can be redrawn through focused practice, revealing the remarkable plasticity of our neural architecture. Musicians who spend years developing finger dexterity literally expand the brain regions devoted to processing sensation from their fingertips. The boundary between one finger and the next becomes more distinct, allowing for the precise control needed to navigate complex musical passages. This neuroplasticity extends throughout our sensory systems. London taxi drivers, who must memorize the city's intricate street layout, develop enlarged hippocampi, the brain regions responsible for spatial navigation. Professional wine tasters show enhanced activity in areas processing taste and smell. The brain constantly reshapes itself based on how we use it, like a river carving new channels through landscape. These discoveries hint at something remarkable about human potential. We're not fixed entities with predetermined capabilities, but dynamic systems capable of profound transformation. The limits we assume are permanent might be more flexible than we imagine. Every time we practice a skill with focused attention, We participate in the ancient biological process of adaptation that has shaped life for billions of years. The brain carries a detailed blueprint of your entire body, constantly tracking every sensation from your fingertips to your toes. This internal map isn't permanently etched in stone, though. It shifts, adapts, grows, and shrinks based on what you do with your life. When you use certain fingers repeatedly for delicate work, your brain actually expands the territory devoted to processing those particular sensations. It's almost like upgrading the resolution on a camera, making everything sharper and clearer. Musicians spend countless hours pressing strings and keys, their fingertips learning to distinguish the tiniest differences in pressure and position. Surgeons develop an almost supernatural awareness of what their hands are doing inside someone else's body. Craftspeople can feel imperfections that would be invisible to the rest of us. Their brains have learned that these subtle signals from their fingertips carry crucial information, so more neural real estate gets dedicated to processing them. This remarkable ability to reshape our sensory maps carries profound implications for people recovering from injuries. When someone stops using their hand after an accident, the brain's representation of that hand becomes blurry, like an old photograph fading over time. But here's where hope enters the picture. Through careful practice and consistent stimulation, that mental map can be sharpened again. The brain remembers how to pay attention when given reason to do so. There's something deeply philosophical about this process. Our capacity to feel the world isn't fixed at birth like some predetermined limit. Instead, sensation becomes something we earn through engagement with our environment. You can literally change how you experience reality by training your fingers to meet the world differently. Touch becomes a skill rather than just a sense. Violinists provide a perfect example of this neural flexibility in action. Their left hand performs incredibly precise movements, fingers dancing across strings with millimeter accuracy. Over years of dedicated practice, brain scans reveal that the left hand occupies significantly more space in the sensory cortex compared to non-musicians. The brain has physically restructured itself to handle the complex demands of musical performance. This isn't some vague notion about talent or natural ability. We're talking about measurable physical changes in brain architecture. The neural territory devoted to those hard-working fingers literally expands to accommodate the flood of important information they're constantly sending upward. Repetition essentially teaches the brain which signals deserve premium processing power. The implications for early learning become fascinating when viewed through this lens. Developing brains might reshape themselves more readily than mature ones, suggesting there could be windows of opportunity for certain skills. The violin transforms from a simple wooden instrument into something far more profound, a tool for conducting an ongoing conversation between fingertips and cortex. Practice doesn't just make perfect, it physically rewrites the neural landscape. London taxi drivers offer another striking example of experience sculpting brain structure. These professionals must memorize an incredibly complex web of streets, landmarks, shortcuts, and traffic patterns across one of the world's largest cities. Their training involves building a detailed mental model that can be accessed instantly, under pressure, with frustrated passengers breathing down their necks. Brain imaging studies of licensed London cabbies have found enlarged regions in areas associated with spatial memory and navigation. The hippocampus, crucial for forming and retrieving memories about places and routes, shows structural differences compared to other people. This represents one of the clearest examples we have of intensive learning, leaving a physical footprint in the brain. The city itself becomes a kind of memory palace, built from asphalt and habit, rather than imagination. Years of navigating London's labyrinthine streets literally reshaped the neural machinery responsible for spatial reasoning. It's remarkable to consider how something as external as urban geography can influence the internal architecture of our minds. The boundary between self and environment becomes surprisingly porous when viewed through this neuroplastic lens. But the brain's adaptation to learning goes beyond just expanding or shrinking different regions. The connections between areas can improve too, becoming faster and more efficient at carrying information. White matter, the brain's communication highways, consists largely of nerve fibers wrapped in a fatty substance called myelin. These pathways allow different brain regions to coordinate their activities with split-second timing. When you first attempt any complex skill, whether playing piano or speaking a foreign language, everything feels clumsy and disconnected. Your brain regions are trying to work together, but the communication feels sluggish, like trying to have a conversation over a poor phone connection. But practice gradually improves these neural highways, allowing information to flow more smoothly between the areas that need to coordinate. Studies have found that intensive training can actually change the properties of white matter, potentially increasing the speed at which signals travel through the brain. This helps explain why skills that initially require enormous conscious effort eventually become almost automatic. The brain isn't just storing new information, it's upgrading the delivery system that makes that information available when needed. Learning a second language places heavy demands on networks that must rapidly switch between different vocabulary and grammar rules. Mastering a sport requires precise timing between visual perception, decision-making, and motor control. Playing music demands coordination between areas processing rhythm, melody, and fine motor movements. In each case, white matter adaptations support the split-second timing these skills require. Perhaps most fascinating of all is the realization that practice can literally change the speed of your thoughts. The neural pathways that seemed impossibly slow at first gradually become superhighways of information flow. What once required painstaking concentration transforms into something that feels almost instinctive. We're not just learning new tricks, we're rewiring our brains to think and respond differently to the world around us. The human brain operates more like a construction site than a library when it comes to learning. Each time we repeat something, we're not just stacking information on top of what we already know. We're actually rebuilding the pathways themselves, creating stronger connections, better highways for thoughts to travel on. Think of it like this: every repetition is laying down new asphalt, making the journey smoother for next time. Your brain runs on prediction engines that work faster than conscious thought. Before you even realize what's happening, your mind has already spotted a signal, calculated a likely reward, and started pushing you toward action. That buzzing phone isn't just noise, it's a trigger that sets off an entire cascade of automatic responses. Your brain remembers that checking the phone usually brings something, maybe relief, maybe entertainment, maybe just an escape from whatever you were doing. These loops become so efficient that your hand can reach for a cookie while your conscious mind is still debating whether you're actually hungry. The fascinating thing is how these patterns form without us really noticing. They slip into our lives like water finding the easiest path down a hill. Once established, they run on autopilot, which explains why breaking them feels so difficult. Scientists have discovered something counterintuitive about changing these automatic behaviors. Fighting the habit directly, using pure willpower, often fails. But if you keep the same trigger and swap out either the action or the reward, the brain adapts much more easily. It's like redirecting a river instead of trying to stop it completely. The water still flows, but now it goes where you want it to go. This reveals something profound about human nature. Our struggles with habits aren't moral failures. They're just learned wiring patterns. Once you understand the mechanics, the mystery dissolves. You're not weak for having automatic responses, you're just human. Your brain is doing exactly what evolution designed it to do, which is to find efficient shortcuts for repeated situations. Old habits don't disappear like pencil marks being erased. They fade more gradually. Like footpaths through a forest that slowly get overgrown when people stop walking on them. Every time you practice a new routine, you're strengthening that neural pathway, while the old one gets a little weaker from neglect. But here's the thing, those old pathways never completely vanish. During times of stress or fatigue, your brain reaches for the most familiar, fastest option available. This is why people often slip back into old patterns during difficult periods. It's not a character flaw, it's your nervous system choosing the path of least resistance when resources are low. The solution isn't to fight this tendency, but to build stronger new pathways during calm periods. consistency during peaceful times creates a robust foundation that can weather future storms. Most people expect change to feel exciting or dramatic, but healthy habit formation actually feels quite boring. That boring quality is a feature, not a bug. It means your nervous system is learning to treat the new behavior as safe and normal. Some researchers suggest making new routines easier than the old ones, at least initially. This removes friction from the equation. Your brain naturally gravitates toward whatever requires less energy, so if the healthier choice is also the easier choice, you win without having to fight yourself. Over time, as the new pathway strengthens, it becomes the default option that fires first. There's a difference between motivation and what scientists call implementation intentions. Motivation is like weather. It changes constantly based on mood, energy levels, and circumstances. Implementation intentions are more like architecture. They provide stable structure regardless of how you feel in the moment. Instead of making vague commitments, you create specific if-then scenarios. Rather than saying you'll exercise more, you decide that if it's Monday at 7 a.m., then you'll walk for 20 minutes. This removes decision fatigue from the equation. When Monday morning arrives, there's no internal debate about whether you feel like exercising. The predetermined script takes over, and the action flows naturally from the trigger. These if-then plans work because they turn future behavior into something you can mentally rehearse ahead of time. When the actual moment arrives, it feels familiar rather than foreign. You're not relying on inspiration or willpower in the heat of the moment. You're following a pre-written script that your brain has already accepted as the plan. The human body sends constant feedback signals to the brain about what state we're in. Your posture isn't just about how you look to others, it's information your nervous system uses to determine how you should feel and behave. When you stand with an open chest and steady stance, your brain often interprets this as a signal of readiness and capability. Conversely, when you hunch forward and fold inward, the nervous system can read this as a defensive posture, suggesting threat or defeat. This interpretation ripples outward, affecting voice tone, eye contact, and willingness to take action. The mechanism probably involves breathing patterns, muscle tension, and attention, rather than some mystical confidence boost. What's particularly interesting is how this creates a feedback loop. Your emotional state affects your posture, but your posture also influences your emotional state. It's a conversation between mind and body that flows in both directions. Changing your physical position can interrupt negative thought spirals simply by shifting your body out of a protective, withdrawn position. This reveals something beautiful about human psychology. We're not just minds trapped in bodies or bodies controlled by minds. We're integrated systems where physical and mental states dance together in constant communication. Understanding this integration gives us more tools for positive change, more entry points for influencing our overall experience. Your face talks to your brain in ways you probably never think about. Every time those muscles around your mouth shift into a smile, they're sending messages up to the emotional centers in your head. The brain listens to what the body is telling it, and sometimes it actually believes the story. When you smile, even if you don't particularly feel like smiling, something interesting happens. The facial muscles contract in a specific pattern, and nerve pathways carry that information back to the brain. The brain interprets these signals as, maybe things aren't so bad right now. It's like your face is having a quiet conversation with your emotional systems, suggesting that perhaps the world is a little brighter than it seemed a moment ago. Scientists have run experiments where people hold pencils in their teeth, forcing their faces into smile-like positions without them even realizing it. Those people often rate cartoons as funnier or find mildly unpleasant experiences less bothersome. The effect isn't huge, but it's measurable, and it points to something profound about how our bodies and minds are wired together. Your breathing changes when you smile too. The muscles relax in a way that often leads to deeper, slower breaths. And breathing, as it turns out, has its own direct line to the nervous system. Slower breathing tends to activate the calm, rest and digest parts of your autonomic nervous system, so a smile can cascade through multiple pathways, all nudging your internal state towards something more peaceful. There's a social element layered on top of this biological one. When you smile, other people tend to smile back. They treat you a little more warmly, maybe speak a bit more kindly. That positive feedback from the world around you can reinforce whatever small mood shift the smile started in the first place. It's like a gentle, upward spiral, beginning with nothing more than moving some muscles in your face. Of course, this doesn't mean you should paste on a fake grin when you're genuinely struggling. The body's feedback systems work both ways, and they're remarkably sensitive to authenticity, but it does suggest that expression and experience are more intertwined than most of us realize. The boundary between feeling something and showing something isn't as clear-cut as it might appear. Now, if smiling can nudge you toward calm, frowning can do the opposite. When your brow furrows and your jaw tightens, those muscles send their own messages to the brain. This time, the signals suggest tension, effort, maybe even threat. The brain receives this input and often responds by ramping up alertness and stress responses. You might notice this during concentration. You're working on something challenging, your face scrunches up with effort, and gradually, what started as focused attention becomes irritation or frustration. The problem didn't necessarily get harder, but your body started sending alarm signals that made everything feel more intense. A clenched jaw often comes with shallow breathing. Those short, quick breaths at the top of your chest send their own stress signals. Shallow breathing can increase arousal and make emotions feel sharper, more urgent. It's as if your body is preparing for action, even when the challenge is just a difficult email or a stubborn piece of technology. This is why relaxing your face can sometimes bring surprising relief. You're not solving the actual problem, but you're stopping your body from adding extra layers of alarm to the situation. Some therapists teach people to do regular face scans, checking for tension around the eyes, jaw, and forehead. Catching that tension early can prevent a small annoyance from snowballing into real frustration. Think about how arguments tend to escalate. Faces get tighter, which makes feelings more intense, which makes faces even tighter. It becomes a feedback loop, where the physical expression of tension feeds back into emotional tension, round and round. Sometimes, consciously softening your facial muscles can be a way to step out of that cycle before it picks up too much momentum. Humans share some fascinating reflexes with marine mammals. When you hold your breath, especially if your face is cool, your body can shift into something called the dive reflex. It's the same biological program that lets seals and dolphins stay underwater for extended periods. Your heart rate slows down, blood flow gets redirected toward your brain and heart, and your body essentially goes into conservation mode. Free divers train this reflex to stay calm during long submersions. They can slow their heart rates dramatically, extending the time they can spend underwater. But you don't need to be a professional diver to access this ancient circuitry. Even in ordinary conditions, holding your breath can trigger noticeable changes in how your body operates. What's remarkable is how quickly this shift happens. You make a conscious decision to stop breathing, and within seconds, your nervous system begins rationing resources. It's mind over matter in the most literal sense. A voluntary choice that triggers deep, automatic programs that have been refined over millions of years of evolution. The fact that you can access this survival circuitry on demand is worth pondering. These aren't just interesting biological facts. They're reminders that your body carries ancient wisdom about how to handle stress and conserve energy. The same reflexes that helped early humans survive in harsh environments are still there, waiting to be activated by something as simple as a held breath. Cold water on your face can act like a reset button for a racing heart. The skin around your eyes, nose, and cheeks connects to nerve pathways that have direct influence over your cardiovascular system. A sudden splash of cold water there can activate parts of that same dive response, slowing your pulse and reducing feelings of runaway arousal. People sometimes stumble upon this accidentally, splashing cool water on their face during a panic attack or after intense exercise, and feeling immediate relief, it's not just the distraction of the cold sensation. It's a genuine physiological signal that shifts the balance of your autonomic nervous system toward calm. This specificity is almost startling when you think about it. Temperature on your face influences heart rate more powerfully than temperature on most other parts of your body. Your nervous system has very particular trigger points, specific combinations of signals that can flip switches in your internal state. It's like discovering that your body has hidden control panels in unexpected places. The precision of these systems hints at just how finely tuned our biology really is. Every small input, whether it's a facial expression, a breathing pattern, or a splash of cold water, gets processed through networks that have been optimized over countless generations. Your daily experience is shaped by reflexes and feedback loops that connect you to the deepest parts of evolutionary history. The human brain operates like a conductor leading an orchestra, where timing circuits control much more than we realize. These neural pathways manage everything from how we speak to how we breathe. When someone feels nervous, their speech naturally accelerates, words tumbling over each other as the brain's internal clock speeds up. The breathing system tries desperately to match this frantic pace, often failing to keep rhythm. But here's something remarkable about our biology. We can hack these timing circuits using the simplest tool imaginable: numbers. Counting slowly acts like an external metronome that the brain willingly follows. Each deliberate count creates space between words, giving the respiratory system time to catch up. The language centers in our minds also benefit from these pauses, using the extra milliseconds to organize thoughts before they become speech. Professional speakers have known this secret for generations. They count silently before presentations, creating artificial rhythms that calm their entire nervous system. The effect goes far beyond mere performance tricks though. When we deliberately slow our speech patterns, we're actually rewiring our physiology from the inside out. The nervous system interprets slow, measured speaking as a safety signal. It's as if we're telling our ancient survival circuits that no predator is chasing us. No emergency requires immediate action. This biological response happens automatically, without conscious thought. Our listeners pick up on this calm energy too, reading slower speech as confidence and control. What's truly fascinating is how mechanical this process can be. A simple counting rhythm reaches directly into the brain's deepest timing mechanisms, reorganizing how we express ourselves. The brain suddenly has a steady beat to follow, like a drummer, keeping an entire band in sync. Music takes this concept even further, transforming breathing into something almost sculptural. When we sing, melodies demand longer exhalations than normal speech ever could. These extended outbreaths naturally slow down our entire breathing pattern, reducing that uncomfortable sensation of air hunger that stress often creates. The physical vibrations of singing create their own therapeutic effects. Sound waves travel through the chest and throat, producing sensations that many people find deeply grounding. Choir members develop extraordinary breath control without even trying, their bodies learning efficient breathing patterns through pure repetition. There's something profound about posture during singing too. The aligned spine, the relaxed jaw, the open chest, all these elements work together to release tension that stress loves to store in our upper body. The emotional component adds another layer of complexity. Songs can shift our mood in seconds, and our emotional state directly influences how we breathe. Medical professionals have started incorporating singing into breathing rehabilitation programs. It's not replacing traditional treatments, but rather using the natural human love of rhythm and melody to guide the respiratory system toward healthier patterns. Think about it. An art form that evolved for expression and connection doubles as sophisticated breath training. Meanwhile, deep in our bodies, immune cells are constantly eavesdropping on conversations between our brain and nervous system. These microscopic defenders receive chemical messages every moment, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline acting like news broadcasts updating them on our current situation. When stress hits in short bursts, this communication system works beautifully. The immune system shifts its priorities, mobilizing energy and preparing for potential injury. It's an ancient response that served our ancestors well when facing immediate physical threats. But modern stress rarely comes in convenient short bursts. When stress becomes our default state, those chemical messages start painting a very different picture for our immune cells. The constant flood of stress hormones begins altering immune activity in ways our bodies never evolved to handle. Inflammation levels can spike at inappropriate times, while repair mechanisms might slow down when we need them most. Researchers spend countless hours studying this intricate two-way conversation because it helps explain why psychological stress shows up as physical symptoms throughout the body. The reverse is equally true though. Calm, consistent routines send entirely different messages to our immune system. Regular sleep schedules, steady meal times, and feelings of social safety all communicate that the world is manageable and predictable. Our thoughts don't directly control every immune cell decision, but they definitely influence the chemical environment where those decisions happen. Mental states become molecular signals, and molecular signals become immune system behavior. It's like our psychology is constantly writing prescriptions for our biology. Loneliness creates one of the most striking examples of this mind-body connection. Social isolation doesn't just feel bad emotionally, it actually registers as a threat state in our evolutionary wiring. The brain interprets being alone as being vulnerable, triggering the same biological responses our ancestors needed when separated from their protective tribal groups. This perceived vulnerability causes the immune system to shift toward higher baseline inflammation, essentially preparing for wounds that might be harder to heal without social support nearby. From a survival perspective, this response makes perfect sense. If you're alone and get injured, help won't be coming quickly. The challenge with modern loneliness is its chronic nature. Our immune systems end up maintaining this high-alert inflammatory state for weeks, months, or even years. This constant biological preparation for injury becomes costly, draining energy and affecting sleep quality, pain sensitivity, and overall mood. What's most unsettling about this process is its invisibility. Someone can appear perfectly healthy on the surface, while their immune system behaves as if danger lurks around every corner. The body keeps preparing for threats that never materialize, wearing itself down through pure biological vigilance. Connection, however, can completely flip this script. Simple social interactions, shared experiences, even brief moments of genuine understanding can signal safety to our immune system. The inflammatory markers begin dropping as the body receives evidence that support exists, that we're not facing the world entirely alone. Compassion practices tap into this same biological pathway, whether we're extending kindness to others or receiving it ourselves. These moments of human connection speak directly to our most ancient survival circuits, reminding them that cooperation and care are available. That constant defensive preparation isn't necessary. Your brain treats compassion like any other skill that gets stronger with practice. When you rehearse caring attention, starting with yourself and slowly expanding to others, something interesting happens in your neural circuits. Brain scans show that people who practice compassion respond differently to distress around them. They stay more regulated, less overwhelmed, more steady. This matters because caring without boundaries often leads to complete burnout. Think about how empathy can flood your system until you shut down completely. Compassion adds a kind of warmth that keeps you present without drowning in someone else's pain. People describe suffering as becoming more understandable, less terrifying. It changes how you behave too. You help more often, retreat less frequently. There's a physical side to this that most people miss. Compassion practice actually lowers your stress responses. Your chest stops tightening. Your breathing gets deeper. Your nervous system shifts into a calmer state. The remarkable thing is that caring becomes a biological condition, not just an emotional choice. You're not forcing kindness onto yourself. You're training your brain to meet pain differently, and neural pathways adapt to that training. Sleep quality improves when people keep gratitude journals, according to several studies. Most of us think sleep depends entirely on physical factors, but the mind sets the stage for rest. Gratitude journaling works by changing what your brain reviews when you hit the pillow. Instead of replaying threats, unfinished tasks, tomorrow's worries, you practice noticing what went well what felt supportive during the day. This shift reduces rumination, which steals sleep from millions of people every night. Studies link gratitude practices with better sleep quality, fewer middle-of-the-night awakenings. The results vary between individuals, and nothing is guaranteed, but the mechanism makes sense. A calmer mind creates low arousal, and low arousal supports deeper rest. Gratitude changes your emotional tone too. It replaces urgency with safety, and safety sends powerful sleep signals throughout your body. This isn't about pretending life is perfect or denying real problems. It's about guiding attention towards stability so your nervous system can finally stand down. When your brain stops scanning for danger, your body follows with slower breathing, softer muscles, easier sleep onset. Rumination happens when your mind chews the same thought over and over until it feels absolutely true. Mindfulness trains a completely different relationship with thinking. Instead of merging with every story your mind creates, you practice noticing stories as events that rise and fall, like weather patterns. That small shift changes everything about attention. Thoughts become objects you can observe rather than tunnels you must enter. Over time, this reduces the grip of repetitive thinking, especially during nighttime hours or stressful periods. People describe more space between triggers and their reactions. That space interrupts automatic spirals before they gain momentum. Mindfulness teaches you to feel physical sensations without immediately interpreting what they mean. This reduces anxiety-driven monitoring, where you constantly scan your body for signs of trouble. The practice isn't empty relaxation or wishful thinking. It's training in how attention moves through your awareness. Brain studies find differences in self-focused networks and regulation systems among long-term practitioners. Individual results vary widely, but the larger wonder is simple. By practicing where you place attention, you change what your mind repeats. When you change what your mind repeats, you change what your body feels. Tinnitus creates suffering, not because of the sound itself, but because it hijacks attention completely. The ringing may stay steady, but distress increases when your brain treats it as a threat that must be solved immediately. Attention training changes that relationship entirely. Instead of fighting the sound, you practice shifting focus away from it and back again, deliberately. This teaches your brain that you have choices about where attention goes. Over time, the sound continues existing, but it becomes less central to your experience. It shifts into background noise, rather than staying an alarm that never stops. Some therapies use structured exercises pairing relaxation with sound exposure. Your brain learns safety in the presence of the ringing. This isn't pretending the sound disappeared, it's changing the meaning your mind assigns to it. When sound stops being evaluated as danger, stress responses drop naturally, muscles loosen, sleep improves. The ringing becomes less intrusive. The fascinating point here touches something profound about human suffering. Distress isn't always tied to intensity of sensation. It's often tied to where attention gets stuck. When attention becomes flexible, suffering shrinks, even when the original signal remains exactly the same. This suggests something remarkable about consciousness itself, about how awareness shapes experience in ways we're only beginning to understand. Your body's alarm system doesn't always match the size of what's wrong. Two people with identical injuries can have completely different pain experiences, and this tells us something fascinating about how our minds work. The brain doesn't just receive pain signals, it interprets them, and that interpretation can change everything. Some people develop a thinking pattern called catastrophizing, where the mind automatically jumps to the worst possible outcome. When pain shows up, the brain treats it like proof that something terrible is happening. This creates a cascade of changes throughout the nervous system, almost like the body is preparing for a much bigger threat than what's actually there. Fear makes everything worse in ways we're only beginning to understand. When the brain decides something is dangerous, muscles start to tighten up. Attention becomes laser-focused on the problem, and every tiny sensation gets magnified. The nervous system becomes hypervigilant, constantly scanning for more signs of trouble. Pain that might have been manageable suddenly feels overwhelming and endless. What's really interesting is how this steals hope from people. When you're convinced the worst is coming, moving and healing feel pointless, even risky. Doctors have learned to measure these thought patterns because they predict who will struggle with disability and distress, regardless of what the actual injury looks like. But here's the encouraging part: these thinking patterns can be changed. The brain is remarkably teachable, even when it comes to pain. Through education, therapy, and carefully planned movement, people can learn that pain doesn't always mean harm is happening. When the mind stops expecting disaster, the body often turns down its alarm system. This doesn't make pain imaginary or fake. It just shows how much our interpretation of events can amplify our experience. The story you tell yourself about pain literally becomes part of the pain itself. Your narrative shapes your reality in ways that go far beyond positive thinking. This is where science meets something almost philosophical: the idea that our inner experience of the world is partly constructed by our expectations and beliefs. Sometimes pain sticks around long after the original problem has healed completely. The injury disappears, but the pain remains, which can be incredibly confusing and frightening for people. This happens because the nervous system can become sensitized, like an alarm that keeps ringing even after the fire is completely out. Sensitization means nerves and brain circuits start responding way more strongly than they should. Signals that used to be harmless, like gentle touch or normal movement, suddenly feel painful. Signals that should feel mildly uncomfortable become excruciating. The brain also becomes overprotective about movement, creating stiffness, and guarding that adds to the discomfort. This explains why people with chronic pain often search desperately for damage that's no longer there. They know something feels wrong, but scans and tests keep coming back normal. The problem isn't in the tissues anymore, it's in how the nervous system is processing information. Researchers now understand that persistent pain can be a disease of the nervous system itself, not a sign that injury is still happening. This changes everything about treatment. Instead of hunting for structural problems, the focus shifts toward retraining the sensitivity of the nervous system. Through movement, education, and gradual exposure to safe activities, the body can learn to feel safe again. It takes time, but the capacity for this kind of learning never really goes away. Pain, when you really think about it, is a perception that the brain builds for protection. It's not just a simple signal traveling from body to mind, it's a complex construction project involving memory, emotion, prediction, and interpretation. When this protection system gets stuck in the on position, the experience can persist indefinitely. But when it gets retrained, the experience can soften dramatically. The brain can learn pain and then unlearn it through retraining. Pain pathways strengthen with repetition, just like any other learned circuit in the nervous system. If pain is present for weeks or months, the brain becomes incredibly efficient at producing that experience quickly. It learns the whole pattern, the fear, the tension, the narrow focus of attention that surrounds the sensation. This doesn't mean people are choosing their pain or that it's somehow their fault. It means the nervous system has practiced this response until it became automatic. But here's the hopeful part. Learning can run in reverse direction too. Retraining approaches teach safety through gradual movement, improved confidence in the body, and reduced interpretation of threat. People learn to distinguish between sensation and actual danger, and the brain learns to stop overreacting to normal signals. Some programs use gentle exposure to activities that people have started to fear, so the body can collect new evidence about what's actually safe. Other approaches focus on changing how the brain predicts pain during everyday tasks. Progress often feels slow at first because the old pathway is so familiar and efficient, like a well-worn trail through the forest. Yet many people report that pain flares become less scary and less frequent over time. The mind's influence over physical experience is truly profound here. The brain's plasticity means that pain, being partly a learned output, can be modified with patience and proper training. The nervous system can learn a completely different response to the same triggers that used to cause problems. Fear has its own learning rules that are fascinating to explore. Fear learns incredibly quickly, sometimes from just one bad experience. A single traumatic event can stamp a situation with danger in ways that last for years. But exposure therapy uses this same learning ability in a careful, structured way to teach the opposite lesson. You face the feared situation in small, manageable steps, while staying completely safe. Safety becomes the new lesson that gets repeated over and over. Through multiple sessions, the brain stops predicting catastrophe and starts predicting survivability instead. This isn't about flooding someone with terror. It's gradual training that keeps the nervous system within a tolerable range. The goal isn't to erase fear completely, which would actually be dangerous. The goal is to reduce false alarms so life can become larger and more flexible again. Exposure therapy works for phobias, panic attacks, and trauma-related triggers, often with remarkably strong evidence behind it. What this proves about the brain is truly fascinating. Fear isn't just a feeling, it's a prediction about what's going to happen next. When that prediction gets updated through experience, the body's entire response changes. Heart rate doesn't spike as much, avoidance behaviors loosen up, and the mind regains options it had forgotten about. Repetition teaches safety, using the exact same mechanisms that once taught fear. The brain's learning systems are remarkably consistent, whether they're acquiring helpful or harmful patterns. The runner's high that people talk about isn't mysterious or magical anymore. For decades, people described it as if it was some kind of spiritual experience that science couldn't explain. Today, neuroscience paints a much clearer picture of what's actually happening in the brain and body during extended exercise. When you move your body for a while, something interesting starts happening in your brain. Your system begins releasing endorphins, these natural pain relievers that float through your bloodstream. At the same time, endocannabinoids cross into your brain, creating a calm, steady feeling that's nothing like the jittery rush of adrenaline. This isn't the frantic energy you might expect. It's more like a warm, quiet space where thoughts can settle. The effect doesn't show up right away, which makes sense when you think about it. Your brain is essentially rewarding you for sticking with something difficult, for pushing through when your body wanted to stop. What's remarkable is that not everyone feels this the same way, and it turns out intensity matters less than just showing up consistently. There's something almost poetic about how our biology is wired to make endurance feel meaningful rather than punishing. It's like we're built to find joy in persistence. Movement does something else that's pretty fascinating. It sends growth signals shooting through your brain. Scientists have spent years studying this protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which sounds complicated, but basically helps your brain cells talk to each other better. When this signal increases, your neurons become more flexible, more resilient to stress and change. Many researchers think this explains why regular movement can lift mood and reduce anxiety symptoms for some people. The changes aren't instant, they're not guaranteed for everyone, but the pattern is strong enough that doctors now consider exercise a legitimate treatment option. Your brain also gets better blood flow when you move, which means more oxygen and nutrients reaching places that need them. Together, these changes create what you might call a more flexible mental environment. Thoughts don't get as stuck, emotions bounce back faster after stress. It's almost like moving your body sends a message to your brain saying adaptation is needed, and your brain responds by becoming more adaptable. There's something special about walking in nature that goes beyond just exercise. Brain imaging studies show that time spent in natural settings actually reduces activity in parts of your brain linked to repetitive self-focused thinking. You know that mental loop, where you replay the same worries over and over without getting anywhere. Nature seems to interrupt that cycle. The sensory environment is rich but not demanding. Leaves moving gently, light shifting through branches, sounds that vary just enough to give your attention somewhere soft to land. Even short exposures can make a difference, especially when you put your phone away and let yourself be present. The benefit isn't really about the physical exercise, since you can walk slowly and still feel it. It's about context. Your brain evolved in natural environments, and those cues might signal safety and abundance rather than the urgency of modern life. A simple walk outdoors can change how thoughts circulate, turning repetition into release. Morning sunlight does something interesting to your brain chemistry. When light reaches your eyes early in the day, it influences serotonin activity, which supports mood, focus, and wakefulness. This same signal helps set your internal clock, the one that controls when you'll feel sleepy later that night. Without enough daylight, especially in the morning, your alertness can lag and your mood can dip. This is why dark winters feel so heavy for many people. The effect doesn't require staring at the sun. Just being outdoors or near a bright window can help. Sunlight also improves how you perceive contrast and color, which keeps your brain engaged with the world around you. What's fascinating is how indirect this process feels. You're not consciously choosing to feel more awake. Light just enters your system and quietly tunes your chemistry and timing. Sleep and body temperature are connected in ways that might surprise you. As bedtime approaches, your core temperature naturally begins to drop. A warm bath can support this process through an unexpected mechanism. The heat causes blood vessels near your skin to open, which allows warmth to escape once you leave the bath. As heat dissipates, your core temperature falls more quickly, and your brain receives a signal that night has arrived. This can create a wave of drowsiness within an hour. Many cultures have used bathing rituals before sleep without understanding the physiology behind them. The effect works best when the bath isn't too late, giving your body time to cool down. There's something elegant about using warmth to encourage cooling and cooling to invite sleep. Anxiety thrives on uncertainty, which is why rituals can be so powerful. When actions follow a familiar sequence, your brain spends less energy predicting what comes next. This can lower background stress and increase your sense of control. Rituals show up everywhere, from bedtime routines to the habits athletes use before games. The specific actions matter less than their consistency. Over time, the sequence itself becomes calming, because your brain learns that this pattern leads to safety or completion. Even small rituals can have an effect, like making tea the same way each evening. In moments of high stress, rituals anchor your attention and reduce decision overload. What's fascinating is that rituals work even when we know they're symbolic. Your nervous system responds to structure at a level below conscious belief. Superstitions might look irrational from the outside, but they persist for good reason. Believing that a certain action brings luck can increase your sense of control in uncertain situations, and that sense of control matters more than you might think. It reduces anxiety and frees mental resources for the task at hand. Studies show that people sometimes perform better when they believe a lucky charm is helping them. The charm doesn't change physics, but it changes mindset. Confidence rises, hesitation drops, effort becomes smoother. Athletes are famous for these habits, but the effect appears in everyday tasks too. The key isn't the superstition itself, but what it does to attention and emotion. When your brain feels supported, it stops scanning for potential failure. Under pressure, your mind often turns inward and starts overanalyzing movements that normally run automatically. This can disrupt timing and coordination, leading to what we call choking. A calm, mental script offers an alternative focus. Instead of thinking about outcomes or mechanics, the script guides attention to simple cues like rhythm or intention. This keeps conscious thought from interfering with trained skills. Athletes, musicians, and speakers often rehearse these scripts in advance, so they feel familiar when nerves rise. The script acts like a track your mind can follow. When stress peaks, the power isn't distraction, it's direction. Attention stays engaged, but not entangled. Confidence can subtly alter how you perceive the world around you. In some studies, athletes performing well report that targets appear larger or closer, golf holes look wider, baseballs seem easier to track. This doesn't mean their eyes change, it means their brain's interpretation of visual information shifts with emotional state. When confidence is high, attention is less cluttered by doubt, and perception may feel clearer and more generous. When confidence drops, the opposite can happen. Targets feel smaller, margins feel tighter. This highlights how perception isn't just a camera feed. It's a construction influenced by emotion and memory. Confidence doesn't merely affect effort. It can affect what the world seems to offer before you even begin moving. During anxious moments, seconds can feel stretched and heavy. This happens because attention becomes sharply focused on the present moment, especially on potential threats. When more information is processed per second, time appears to slow down. Your brain is sampling the environment intensely, creating a denser memory of the interval. This effect can be useful in emergencies, where rapid assessment matters. In everyday anxiety, it can feel unpleasant and exhausting. Waiting becomes harder. Discomfort feels endless. The experience isn't imagined, it reflects how your brain tracks events. When anxiety fades and attention broadens, time often seems to speed up again. While you sleep, especially during vivid dreaming, your brain becomes highly active. Stories unfold, emotions rise, imagined movement can feel completely real. Yet your body usually stays still because your brain actively dampens signals sent to your muscles. This creates a state called sleep paralysis, which is protective rather than frightening. Without this system, people would physically act out their dreams, sometimes with dangerous consequences. The remarkable part is that paralysis isn't passive. It's an active command sent from your brainstem to your spinal cord. Your brain knows you're dreaming even if you don't, and it chooses safety over expression. Parkinson's disease reveals how deeply movement and motivation are intertwined. The condition involves changes in dopamine, a chemical often associated with reward and desire. As dopamine levels drop, people don't only struggle to move smoothly, they may also struggle to initiate movement at all. Tasks that once felt automatic can feel effortful or unreachable. This isn't laziness or lack of will, it's chemistry reshaping how intention becomes action. Some individuals with Parkinson's can suddenly move fluidly in emergencies or when emotionally stimulated. This shows that capability is still present, but access to it is altered. The disease demonstrates that willpower isn't separate from biology. In a classic experiment called the rubber hand illusion, a fake hand is placed in front of a person while their real hand is hidden. Both hands are stroked at the same time, and after a short while, many people begin to feel as if the rubber hand is their own. If the fake hand is threatened, they may flinch. This shows that body ownership isn't fixed. Your brain decides what belongs to you by combining sight, touch, and timing. Your sense of self is actually a construction, not a constant. The boundary of what feels like you can shift based on sensory evidence. What feels deeply personal and permanent is actually continuously negotiated by your brain. Virtual reality has emerged as a surprising tool for treating severe burn pain. When patients enter immersive digital worlds during painful procedures, many report significant pain reduction. The brain becomes absorbed in navigating these environments, leaving fewer resources available to process pain signals. This isn't simple distraction. Brain imaging suggests that attention and emotion circuits are genuinely redirected. This shows how competitive perception can be. Pain isn't only about signals from injured tissue, it's also about what your brain prioritizes. When attention is captured deeply enough, suffering can soften. During long, demanding efforts, fatigue isn't only muscular, it's also interpretive. Your brain constantly evaluates whether the effort is worth continuing. When a clear purpose is present, that evaluation can change. Athletes often report that effort feels lighter when tied to meaning, such as finishing for a teammate or reaching a personal milestone. Studies suggest that purpose can alter how effort signals are processed, reducing perceived strain at the same physical workload. Your body is doing the same work, yet the experience differs. Purpose gives your brain a reason to tolerate discomfort without escalating alarm. When people sing together, something subtle and remarkable happens. Their breathing patterns begin to align, and because breathing influences heart rhythm, heart rates can begin to synchronize as well. Studies of choirs show this shared physiological rhythm emerging over time. The group becomes a coordinated system, not just musically but biologically. This synchronization may contribute to the feelings of connection and calm many singers describe. It's not only emotional bonding, it's physical alignment. Shared rhythm reduces unpredictability, which lowers stress. The body senses cooperation and safety. Chanting produces simple, repetitive sound structures that your brain can easily anticipate. Predictability matters because it reduces uncertainty, which is a major driver of stress. As voices repeat the same pattern, breathing often slows and becomes more regular. The nervous system responds by easing arousal. Chanting also limits internal dialogue. Your mind has less room to wander into worry when sound fills awareness. In groups, chanting adds another layer. Shared timing creates social safety, which further calms the body. Compassion isn't abstract. When you think of someone with warmth or care, your body often responds immediately. Facial muscles relax, your jaw loosens, your eyes soften, heart rate may slow slightly, breathing can deepen. These changes occur because compassion activates calming pathways linked to social safety. This can happen even when the compassion is directed inward. Self-directed kindness can produce similar physiological shifts. Over time, repeated compassionate thoughts may make calm states easier to access. Panic often escalates because sensations are misinterpreted as danger. A racing heart is read as catastrophe. Tightness becomes proof of threat. Learning to notice sensations without judgment interrupts this process. Instead of reacting, you observe. This creates space between sensation and meaning. When sensations are allowed to rise and fall naturally, they often lose intensity. The nervous system learns that discomfort is tolerable. Over time, your brain updates its predictions and stops escalating so quickly. Panic relies on feedback loops. Awareness breaks those loops. The brain changes through repetition, not revelation. Small shifts practiced daily can accumulate into meaningful change. This is the principle behind neuroplasticity. When you repeatedly reframe stress, practice attention control, or respond differently to discomfort, you strengthen new neural pathways. Brain imaging studies show changes linked to consistent mental training. Even when daily practices are brief, the effect is gradual and often invisible at first. Weeks and months of small changes can reshape how your brain responds by default. A gentle practice repeated often can outperform dramatic effort applied rarely. The mind isn't transformed in moments. It's sculpted quietly through what you do most days.